Chapter 797. The Doomsday Thunder was the most lethal weapon mastered by the humans on this planet under the control of the Immortals and Buddhas. Its maximum power was equivalent to a full-force blow from a 33rd tier heaven immortal, and its smaller yield was equivalent to a 10 million-ton nuclear bomb. When the Doomsday Thunder pillar on the satellite shot up into the sky, everyone knew that the people on this planet had gone completely crazy. In order to fight for the few remaining resources, a religious war was waged in the name of Immortals and Buddhas. Under the slogan of religion, advanced technology was used to kill their own kind. It was an absurd comedy. However, the humans who were in the middle of it did not feel any sense of comedy. They only felt the endless darkness and the fear of destruction. Once someone used the first Doomsday Thunder, then another pillar of fire hundreds of miles high rose from the surface of the satellite, melting a steel base inhabited by millions of people. Wu Qi clearly saw millions of human figures suddenly burst into a dazzling light in the red flame, and then instantly turned into the tiniest energy particles, rushing out in all directions along with the violent shock waves. Through the pillar of fire, Wu Qi sensed the situation within a mile of the core of the Doomsday Thunder. The space there was distorted, and the temperature was hundreds of millions of degrees. It was a temperature that could only be reached by the ordinary Nine Heavens fire, and even ordinary heaven immortals who crafted heaven immortal items could not control a flame of this temperature. With the connivance of the Immortals and Buddhas, the power mastered by the humans on this planet was too terrifying. Buddha Futsu sighed softly, then turned to look at Jizhua with a strange smile and said, "You see, King Tangqiu, our cost and effort are not as little as what I've just told you. You see, they have used the strongest power they have, and they have caused great damage to these planets. Every planet that was successfully harvested from the power of faith and virtue would be destroyed by the war. All the stars in the mortal world were refined by the ancient Immortals and Buddhas using the bodies of the fallen ancient fiend gods. When the bodies of the stars were destroyed, they had to collect the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and all kinds of materials to repair these stars. This was an extremely complicated and tedious task. The mortal worlds were an exquisite man-made world with a unique power of law, and their bodies were crafted with the bodies of ancient fiend gods. If he wanted to repair the damaged planet of the mortal world, he would have to use all kinds of precious innate grade materials. This was only the repair on the physical level, and the damaged power of laws needed to be repaired by primordial experts at the cost of their origin power. Otherwise, the world of mortals would have an immeasurable flaw because of the damage of a planet, which would then lead to a cataclysmic chain reaction. Several eons ago, there was a certain primordial immortal who guarded the mortal worlds, unwilling to part with his own power of the heavenly Tao, and turned a blind eye to the destruction caused by the sinking of a planet. As a result, thousands of mortal worlds near the edge of that mortal world were struck by disasters such as land sinking and massive earthquakes in the following month, resulting in the death toll of more than 10 trillion humans. The heavy casualties were all blamed on the primordial immortal. The heavenly Tao had sent a great disaster. When the primordial immortal was meditating, his mind was suddenly invaded by a demon, and after suffering from qi deviation, his Tao foundation was completely destroyed, and he became a cripple. In just 3 months, more than 100 gold immortals, tens of thousands of heaven immortals, and countless disciples of the sect he founded were struck by an immeasurable fiend tribulation, and all of them died. With that as a lesson, no one dared to be stingy with their own power of the heavenly Tao when they were on duty. It took a primordial immortal years to condense a wisp of his own power of the heavenly Tao from the laws of the heavenly Tao, which showed how laborious it was to repair the damage to these small planets in the mortal worlds. For the planet in front of them to be able to develop to its current level smoothly, there were at least 7 primordial immortals guarding it, taking good care of it, and not daring to be careless. Among these 7 primordial immortals, the most had been on duty here for 70,000 years, and the least had been here for 7,000 years. Smiling coldly, Buddha Futsu looked at Jizhua, who had a horrified look on his face. "Do you still think these virtues are so easy to get, King Tangqiu? Only with 7 primordial immortals on duty, here can King Tangqiu smoothly harvest the virtues today, and you can step into the realm of primordial without any hard work. He took a deep breath and said in a cold voice, "Do you really think the virtues are so cheap and easy to get, King Tangqiu?" Not to mention what King Tangqiu was thinking, even Wu Qi could not help but feel his scalp go numb. In order to obtain the power of faith and the virtues of heaven and earth, these immortals and Buddhas really spared no effort. To make a planet grow to the level it was now, to allow a peak-level gold immortal to easily harvest the virtues and break through the bottleneck of primordial immortal, the cost was indeed not small. On average, it would take half an aeon for a mature planet to be harvested successfully. How many times would it take for billions of mortal worlds to fail in this half an aeon before a planet could grow into what it was now? A chance to break through to the realm of primordial immortal every half an aeon. Most probably, many people would fight for it with all their might. Which of those primordial immortals did not have a few trusted personal disciples and a group of descendants? The more primordial immortals among their disciples and relatives, the stronger their power would be. On average, there was only one chance to break through to the realm of primordial immortal every half an aeon. Anyone who had the ability to fight for it would surely risk their lives to fight for it. But now, the chance had been given to King Tangqiu. Wu Qi was very curious. What exactly did King Tangqiu and his father, King Baishan, promise Liu Bang that he could get this chance? Even though the cultivation technique of the human race was the fastest, there were very few warriors who could break through to the realm of Hongmeng Panga Heaven. Without thousands of years of painstaking cultivation and a great opportunity, it would be difficult for them to succeed. King Tangqiu had gotten a great bargain this time. Buddha Fudu kept nagging at King Tangqiu, telling him how difficult it was to manage a planet that was fully qualified for harvesting. King Tangqiu's eyes darted back and forth, and his heart seemed to have flown to some unknown place. He did not take Buddha Fudu's words to heart. But Buddha Fudu's words had clearly worked, for King Tangqiu no longer mentioned the matter of asking Liu Bang to give him extra compensation. Amidst Buddha Fudu's nagging, time flew by. Both sides fighting on the satellite had simultaneously used doomsday thunders, a terrible weapon that could destroy the enemy and themselves at the same time. Wu Qi, hundreds of pillars of fire towered into the sky, and the landscape on the surface of the satellite was twisted and deformed by the huge explosion. Then, it was unknown which side struck first, but hundreds of doomsday thunders were launched from the satellite toward the surface of the planet. Some of the doomsday thunders were intercepted in space, while others successfully broke through the atmosphere and hit their targets. At least 100 large cities were enveloped by the towering pillars of fire. Each of them was home to more than 10 million people, and this wave of attack alone had turned more than 1 billion mortals into nothingness. Even in the distant void, Wu Qi could sense an aura of brutality and despair pouring out of the planet's surface. Countless tiny flames soared into the sky from all directions, and thousands of doomsday thunderbolts whistled up into the sky, shooting in all directions in a messy manner. No one knew who launched so many doomsday thunders, and no one knew where they were headed. In short, thousands of cities, large and small, were destroyed in the flames, and countless people were wailing and wailing in the shadow of death. Bright lights flickered across the sky as 3 Buddhas, 3 primordial immortals from the Tao League, and a primordial fiend immortal shrouded in surging black smoke appeared with a large group of bodhisattvas, gold immortals, and fiend immortals. At least tens of thousands of immortals and Buddhas hovered in midair, concealing their figures with restrictive magic as they looked at the planet engulfed in flames with smiles on their faces. The smiles on the faces of the 7 primordial immortals were very relaxed. After tens of thousands of years of hard work, they had finally brought the planet into the final orbit they had planned. Although they were not qualified to let their disciples reap the rich fruits and become primordial immortals, they would all be rewarded handsomely by the Celestial Court and the Buddhist League, and their status in their respective powers would be greatly improved. The 3 Buddhas of the Buddhist League would be rewarded by the Lord Buddha, Amitabha, with the seeds of the 8 treasures lotus throne. After careful cultivation, they would possess a portable lotus throne of the innate spirit item level with an amazing defensive power. The 3 primordial immortals of the Tao League would be given a set of materials to craft a primordial immortal artifact, and during the process, They would be instructed by several top figures of the Tao League to ensure that they could craft a powerful natal immortal artifact. The Fiend Immortal, who originated from the Fiend League and was now the overlord of a part of the Fiend realm, would be given special permission by the Celestial Court and the Buddhist League to control 100 small heavenly realms in outer heavenly realms for a period in the future. During that period of time, in those 100 small heavenly realms, he could kill as many mortals and cultivators as he pleased, and use their souls and blood essence to refine his body. This was the reward they had earned from their years of hard work in cultivating the planet. Being on duty in the mortal world was a laborious task. The human race was simply too complicated and fickle. Even in the mortal world, there were too many unpredictable factors that could ruin their efforts in a day. They were very lucky to be able to successfully cultivate a mature planet and receive such a generous reward. All the immortals and Buddhas looked at the planet in the flames of war with joy in their eyes like old farmers looking at the harvest fields. They laughed heartily and charmingly, like old men in the countryside who were half drunk from drinking fine wine in their own yards after the harvest. In just 6 hours, the destructive attacks on the planet's surface had entered an uncontrollable state. The top-secret bases of the 7 major powers of the 2 camps had launched all the doomsday thunders they had at the same time, blanketing the entire planet in all directions. More than 200 billion mortals had died in the initial bombardment, and the rest were wailing and weeping in the flames of war. Almost everyone who was still alive was kneeling on the ground, weeping bitterly and begging for help from the immortals and Buddhas they believed in. The fear of impending death made these people's faith extremely pious in that instant. The pure and vast power of faith swept across the surface of the planet like a hurricane or tsunami. In Wu Qi's chaotic divine eyes, the power of faith had turned into a blinding light, piling up hundreds of miles thick on the surface of the planet. Before long, the thin light was compressed into a viscous liquid, and the power of faith was increasing at an exponential rate. Tens of thousands of immortals and Buddhas stood on clouds in the void, each of them smiling in a carefree manner. At Buddha Fuda's summon, the eager King Tang Chiu strode toward the planet in front of him with a huge bone talisman in his hand. With immeasurable virtues and faith, King Tang Chiu rushed over joyfully. Chapter 798. Boundless Virtue. Boundless Faith. After harvesting as much as he wanted, he would be able to reach Hongmeng Panga Heaven, form his minor Panga golden body, and ascend to the heavens in a single bound. King Yang Qiu trembled with excitement. He suddenly felt that King Zhang Qiu's death was too wonderful. Why couldn't he have died a few years earlier? Not only King Zhang Qiu, but even King Baishan should have died. When he had the overall strength equal to that of a primordial expert, he would inherit King Baishan's throne and ascend to the throne of the human emperor. Only then would his life be worth it. The huge bone talisman in his hand glowed faintly as he was about to throw it out. The talisman was carefully crafted by the high oracles of Deyu's Directorate of Celestials, and it had the miraculous effect of freezing the void and time. With its power, he could destroy all the doomsday thunderbolts in a quarter of an hour, and then perform a miracle in front of hundreds of billions of people, absorbing their faith and faith. At that time, the heavenly Tao would sense that he had saved hundreds of billions of people from certain death, and the heavenly virtues would bestow upon him enough for him to ascend to Hongmeng Panga Heaven. At the same time, with the virtues, he might be able to earn an eon's worth of lifespan. It was said that Gao, King Yufeng, was rewarded by the heavenly Tao for killing the sovereign of Myriad Immortal Alliance, gaining an enormous amount of virtues of the heavenly Tao and an eon's worth of lifespan. Was he not as good as Gao? Amidst his laughter, Gao threw the bone talisman out. A deep, ancient, and distant chant rang out from it, while a great sheet of bright light shot out and enveloped the planet below in a flash. Countless doomsday thunderbolts that tore through the air and were flying toward their target froze in midair, unable to move anymore. The moment Gao threw out the bone talisman, Wu Qi, who was hiding under the gale's feather, moved as well. Biting the tip of his tongue and spraying out a mouthful of blood essence, Wu Qi immediately produced the natural phenomena medallion. Then, the dark Een celestial pagoda whizzed out, and a large amount of starlight poured down like a waterfall. Countless stars flickered in the small world created by the worldly phenomena medallion. As a peak gold immortal, Wu Qi pointed at the profound Yin celestial tower, causing it to shine with a brilliant light. Next, the flow of time within the world enveloped by the worldly phenomena steel suddenly increased by 1,000-fold. This was also the fastest time that Wu Qi could control. In this way, only 1 day had passed in the outside world, but 1,000 days had passed in this small world, giving Wu Qi enough time to do something. The 1.08 billion ancient stars in the interstitial world lit up at the same time, and the 16 types of fate they represented: life, death, disaster, fortune, mystery, trap, despair, joy, anger, sorrow, ring, nobility, inferiority, purity, and turbidity were activated at the same time. Countless fine starlight shot out of Wu Qi's body, turning Wu Qi into a silver ball of light in a flash. A vast amount of light shot out of his body, resonating with the starlight emitted by the dark Yin celestial tower and fusing into one. With a sway of his body, the pearl of Shin that Wu Qi had obtained in the past unleashed a vast amount of Shin energy, while the worldly phenomena medallion gleamed with a brilliant light. As soon as the strange light shone on the Shin energy, it immediately transformed into a hazy halo. Layers of illusions emerged around Wu Qi, and all the tens of thousands of immortals and Buddhas were caught in them. Even Buddha Futu, who was about to produce his pagoda when he realized that the situation was not good, had his eyes glazed over and was quietly sucked into the illusions. It was during this brief moment of confusion that Wu Qi's real trump card was activated. 108 Kunwu swords flew out of his body silently, quickly extracting the power of the starlight in the surroundings, and fusing the 16 types of fate of the stars: life, death, disaster, fortune, mystery, trap, despair, joy, anger, sorrow, ring, nobility, inferiority, purity, and turbidity, to form the fiend-slaying sword formation in the void. The core power of this sword formation was the power of the heavenly Tao contained in the kaleidoscopic star core that Wu Qi had obtained. It was the power of the stars that none of the immortals and Buddhas present were familiar with. If they were not familiar with it, it would be very difficult to crack it. Especially when Wu Qi activated the power of the stars with the fiend-slaying sword formation, it had increased the power of the formation by several times. In just a flash, Wu Qi had completely frozen the entire void, and time suddenly slowed down 1,000 times. Even Buddha Futu and the other 7 primordial immortals present could not adapt to the change in the flow of time, and their movements became extremely strange and sluggish. These primordial immortals on duty in the mortal worlds, including Buddha Futu, had only just advanced to this realm. Their realms might be higher than Wu Qi's, but their magic power and divine abilities were not much weaker than Wu Qi's. With the exception of Buddha Futu, who had been enlightened by Lord Buddha, Amitabha, the other 7 primordial immortals might not be able to defeat Wu Qi in a head-on fight, not to mention that Wu Qi had set up a formation to trap them with a sneak attack. Just look at the treasures in Wu Qi's hands: the dark Yin celestial tower, the best treasure of Dayu's supreme oracle that could control time, the natural phenomena medallion personally crafted by the ancient sacred Emperor Zhuanshu, the 108 Kunwu swords bestowed by the yellow Emperor Xianyuan, the brand new law of stars extracted from the kaleidoscopic star core that none of the immortals of today had ever come into contact with, and the Shin energy emanating from the Shin pearl of the primordial mystic sea. Wu Qi's formation really had the power to trap and kill primordial immortals. As the Kunwu swords moved, the starlight that blotted the sky turned into 16 dazzling silver vortexes that spun and dragged tens of thousands of immortals and Buddhas into them in a daze. Some of the immortals and arhats with the weakest cultivation bases were torn to shreds by the killing intent in the starlight, and their immortal bodies and immortal souls disintegrated in an instant. The Kunwu swords emitted faint silver starlight and slashed in all directions. Wherever they passed, the immortals whose cultivation bases were weaker than Wu Qi's fell like rice under a sickle. The Kunwu swords were a divine artifact. They were the divine weapons personally crafted by the Yellow Emperor Xianyuan to kill Qiyu. None of the immortals and Buddhas present, including Buddha Futu, had fleshly bodies that could be compared with Chiyo's. Wherever the edge of the sword passed, all the immortal bodies and immortal weapons were sliced through like tofu. Golden blood spurted out, and immortal souls and relics flew all over the sky, but they were all swept up by the 16 huge silver halos. 16 types of celestial destinies: life, death, disaster, fortune, confusion, trap, despair, joy, anger, sorrow, ring, nobility, inferiority, purity, and turbidity, together with the minor worlds conjured by the natural phenomena medallion and the boundless illusions conjured by the Shun's pearls. All the immortals were immersed in the infinite joy, anger, sorrow, and joy similar to the 6 paths of reincarnation, experiencing all kinds of unimaginable and terrifying scenes. Their divine senses were confused by the external force, and they could not detect Wu Qi's movements at all. Only Buddha Futu and the 7 primordial immortals, who, after all, had a higher cultivation base than the others, and their divine senses had undergone a fundamental change. They were confused by the formation for about 10 minutes, and then quickly came to their senses. A dreadful power was released from their bodies. They quickly adapted to the strange feeling brought by the time being slowed down 1,000 times, and quickly broke through the illusions created by the Shun pearls. Right now, they were struggling hard in all kinds of miraculous scenes generated by the natural phenomena medallion. But Wu Qi did not give them the chance to struggle. After laying out such a great formation and instantly activating the fiend-slaying sword formation to kill over 10,000 immortals, Wu Qi's chaotic energy had been depleted. But then, Wu Qi gave a soft cry and slapped the top of his head. The soul of Taotai rushed out with a deafening roar. The ferocious Taotai opened its mouth and inhaled, sucking the bodies and blood essences of the tens of thousands of immortals and arhats killed by Wu Qi into its mouth. In the blink of an eye, they were transformed into chaotic energy for Wu Qi's use. Then, the Taotai opened its mouth again and sucked in, swallowing the satellite near the planet that was already in a mess of death and injuries. There were not many living people left. The satellite, which was also 1,000 times larger than the moon, only gave a muffled rumble before it quickly disintegrated into a vast amount of natural energy and fused into Wu Qi's body. Wu Qi gave a long roar, and the blood centipede sword, his ultimate trump card, transformed into a beam of blood-red light and spun around the necks of Buddha Futu and the other primordial immortals. The blood centipede sword, which was forged with innate killing intent, was extremely sharp. Before they could react, Buddha Futu and the other primordial immortals grunted, and the heads of the 3 primordial immortals and the fiend immortal flew high up into the air. Their immortal bodies had been killed by Wu Qi. A beam of golden light rushed out of Buddha Futu's body, and the Buddha's pagoda burst out of his body to block the blood centipede sword. A crisp sound rang out as the sword was knocked flying dozens of feet away. The other 3 Buddhas were shrouded in a dazzling golden light. The blood centipede sword had cut their necks in half, but their most important neck bones were still intact. As soon as Buddha Futu's golden pagoda appeared, he immediately regained his ability to move. He gave a furious roar as he glared at Wu Qi and growled, "You again!" With both hands locked into a lotus incantation gesture, Buddha Futu clenched his jaws and slapped it down toward Wu Qi's chest. A lotus vajra scepter condensed of Buddhist power whistled out with a golden flame and smashed heavily toward Wu Qi's chest. Wu Qi gave a cold snort. His body suddenly expanded to tens of feet tall, and his skin was covered with 3 layers of black dragon scales. Then he threw a punch at Buddha Futu's attack with all his might. "Let me see how strong you Buddhas are." Wu Qi roared with laughter as he activated the dragon kill. Shrouded in purple mist, Wu Qi's fist collided with the lotus vajra scepter. A loud cracking noise rang out, as all 3 layers of black scales on his arm were shattered, and his muscles were torn apart. Only a completely translucent, purple-gold arm bone remained perfectly fine, and did not suffer any damage. With a flick of his purple-gold finger, the lotus vajra scepter unleashed by Buddha Futu shattered with a rumble. Then, Wu Qi dashed to the front of Buddha Futu like a bolt of lightning, his arm gleaming like a bone blade as he slashed at Buddha Futu 3,600 times in a row. In just a fraction of a second, he had slashed 3,600 times in a row. This speed was already Wu Qi's current limit. Buddha Phutta's true form was firmly protected by the pagoda, and Wu Qi's bones were extremely tough after absorbing the remains of ancient immortals. So, although the 3,600 heavy blows landed on the pagoda and made it glow brightly, it could not break Buddha Phutta's defense no matter what. It was a defensive treasure that Lord Buddha, Amitabha, had obtained through countless tribulations. How could Wu Qi possibly break it with his current cultivation base? Buddha Phutta laughed wildly. As he performed another incantation gesture with both hands and was about to attack Wu Qi, the 108 Kunwu swords around him spun again. The void in the surroundings shook violently, and Buddha Phutta and the other severely wounded primordial immortals were dragged into the heart of the fiend-slaying sword formation. 18 blood-red shadows rushed out of Wu Qi's body. Blood-draining celestial fiends let out shrill howls and lunged madly at the immortals and Buddhas who were confused by the formation. The Blood Sea Grand Magic was best at absorbing people's blood essence. With Wu Qi's current cultivation base as a peak-level gold immortal, wherever the blood-draining celestial fiends passed, as long as their cultivation base was weaker than Wu Qi's, their spirit, energy, and digested by the blood-red light. In just a blink of an eye, tens of thousands of immortals and Buddhas on duty were killed by Wu Qi, and all their blood essence was absorbed and digested by the blood-draining celestial fiends. With a cold snort, Wu Qi glanced at the flying ship, which was spinning rapidly in the starlight shrouded by the sky-veiling flag of chaos. After hesitating for a moment, he finally abandoned Lu Bang and the others and flew straight toward King Tang Qiu, who was frozen in midair and unable to move. The blood centipede sword turned into a beam of blood-red light and swept across King Tang Qiu, cutting him in half before he could even howl. Chapter 799. GMO, who was split in half from the middle, rolled away with a smile on his face. He did not realize that he had been killed by Wu Qi. Wu Qi released Ao Buzan and the 4 dragon pythons, who opened their mouths and tore GMO into 5 pieces of bloody flesh and swallowed them. As a peak-level second Panga Heaven cultivator, every piece of GMO's flesh contained an enormous amount of energy essence, which was the best tonic for Ao Buzan and the others. The blood centipede sword shot out in a beam of blood-red light and tore the glowing bone talisman into pieces. Wu Qi flipped his hand and pushed his Kunwu swords forward. Driving the sword formation, the Kunwu swords rolled up a boundless silver torrent, suppressing the flying ship where Lu Bang and the others were at the core of the formation. Staring at the planet that was on the verge of destruction, Wu Qi shook his arms. The black scales covering his body quickly receded, and the flesh on his right arm grew back rapidly. A great sheet of golden light gushed out of his body like molten gold. With a long roar, he transformed into the golden body of a Buddha with 4 faces and 6 arms. A plume of white smoke rushed out of the top of his head. A water tank-sized, pure white natal relic hovered in the white smoke, emitting a dazzling light that illuminated the whole planet. Silently exercising the great light indestructible Amitabha treasure scripture, Wu Qi recited the mantra of the Buddhist League and let out a thunderous roar. Mortals, what are you waiting for? Do you understand the sins you have committed? The monstrous killing and the boundless sins are all your sins. Every word he uttered turned into huge golden characters that hovered in the void. All the mortals on the planet could clearly see the golden characters hovering in the void. Wu Qi's roar went straight into their souls and made them tremble. Their filthy desires were forcibly expelled from their souls by Wu Qi with the power of the Buddhist League when they were on the brink of life and death. Countless wisps of black smoke rushed out of their 7 orifices and vanished amidst the white light that illuminated the whole planet. Wu Qi continued to roar. Before you committed the sins of killing, did you ever think about your parents? Did you ever think about your children? Did you ever think about your loved ones? Heaven and earth gave birth to you, but instead of working hard to strengthen your people, you killed each other and committed the endless sins of killing. Your sins are unforgivable. With every word he uttered, Wu Qi's Dharma body doubled in size. After a while, Wu Qi had grown to tens of thousands of miles tall, and all the mortals could see his colossal Dharma body. The natal relic emitted a vast white light to cleanse the souls of all living beings, forcibly expelling the evil thoughts in the bottom of their hearts. It was as if the rotten flesh was being forcibly gouged out from a wounded body. Even though the pain made these people scream hoarsely, all the evil thoughts in their hearts were completely digested. With a casual point of his finger, a bloody fiend shadow flickered and transformed into Wu Qi. A gust of wind rose from the ground, and the atmosphere of the whole planet surged with the transformation of this blood-draining celestial fiend. The gust of wind rolled up countless doomsday thunders and threw them into the heart of the fiend-slaying sword formation. With a thought in Wu Qi's mind, the doomsday thunders, which were powerful enough to destroy the planet 100 times, exploded in the heart of the formation. Vaguely, the furious roars of Buddha Futu and the other primordial experts could be heard coming from the heart of the formation. Clearly, they were badly wounded by the explosion. The doomsday thunders vanished without a trace, and the hundreds of billions of people on the planet's surface were suddenly saved from the disaster. They, who were on the brink of death and on the verge of collapse, dropped to their knees at the same time and worshipped Wu Qi madly. Among them, the believers of the Buddhist League had fallen into a state of near madness. Hundreds of billions of believers almost burned their souls as pure golden power of faith swarmed out of their bodies, quickly turning into a vast golden torrent that rushed into Wu Qi's body. Those believers who belonged to the Tao League were still a little hesitant at this moment of life and death. Looking at Wu Qi's Dharma idol hovering high in the sky, although they had already dropped to their knees, the last bit of faith and obsession in their hearts had not been eliminated. They knelt to Wu Qi, but did not worship him. With a sway of his body, the blood-draining celestial fiend god's clone unleashed a bright light of pure yang that blotted out the sky. He forcibly exercised the innate pure yang universal talisman that he obtained from the dead sovereign, causing 3 beams of light to shoot out from the top of his head. Each beam of light carried a hazy figure that shone in all directions, while the light around him shone brightly like the sun. Hundreds of billions of mortals, who had been shaken by Wu Qi's divine ability of the Buddhist League and whose evil thoughts had been forcibly stripped from their hearts and souls, stared blankly at the blood-draining celestial fiend god's clone that had manifested in the standard form of a Taoist immortal. Suddenly, tears streamed down the faces of those believers who belonged to the Tao League. They fell to their knees piously, recited the Taoist demon-subduing heart-calming sutra, and kowtowed to the blood-draining celestial fiend god's clone. As the light of pure yang illuminated the whole planet, the mortals whose divine souls were injured felt streams of heat flowing in their bodies. Although they were dizzy from the Buddhist League's mantra, they quickly recovered their spirits, and their souls were stronger than usual. The Taoist believers cried out as well, and a power of faith that was 30% stronger than that of the Buddhist believers gushed out of their bodies. The golden torrent rushed whistling into the blood-draining celestial fiend god's clone, and then into Wu Qi's body. 2 enormous streams of faith rushed into Wu Qi's forehead, and his divine soul began to devour the pure power of faith. Without the need to digest it, the power of faith quickly fused with his divine soul as if it had always been a part of his divine soul. In just 10 minutes, Wu Qi's divine soul had grown 100 times stronger. In terms of the strength of his divine soul alone, he had stepped into the realm of 9th-tier primordial immortal. His divine soul was 100 times stronger, and his intelligence was tens of millions of times stronger. Wu Qi was like a giant computer that was suddenly equipped with countless external processors. The speed at which he could calculate the heavenly Tao skyrocketed. Countless profound meanings flowed through his divine soul and quickly became the laws of great Tao that he could completely master. Lord Buddha's Great Light Indestructible Amitabha Treasure Scripture, Reverend Gale's Song of Gale, Lady Divine Water's Dark Een Water Scripture, the Sovereign's Innate Pure Yang Universal Scripture, the Blood Sea Grand Magic he obtained from Patriarch Yuan Hua, the True Body of Heaven and Earth Scripture, the Dragon Transformation Script, the Dragon Kill, the Primordial Tao of Divinity, all kinds of primordial divine script, and even the Inferno Hell Fiend Scripture and the Celestial Fiend. Battle the Heaven Scripture. At this moment, the souls of hundreds of billions of people merged with Wu Qi's divine soul. All the life experiences and knowledge they had gained through thousands of reincarnations were available to Wu Qi. Each of them was helping Wu Qi analyze the various essences of the great Tao that he knew, and analyzing the meaning of these cultivation scriptures sentence by sentence. The souls of hundreds of billions of people were open to Wu Qi without reservation. Wu Qi could clearly sense their joy, anger, sorrow, and joy, as well as all their love, resentment, and anger. Exercising the great light indestructible Amitabha treasure scripture, Wu Qi's powerful divine will wash these people's souls over and over again. Gradually, these people began to have the most filial piety towards Wu Qi, the kind of pure love and admiration that only children had for their biological parents. These people's hearts and souls were all tied to Wu Qi. Even if Wu Qi asked them to die, they would obediently do so. As the divine light of the relic continued to sprinkle down, these people's worship of Wu Qi grew stronger and stronger. Regardless of whether they were from the Buddhist League or the Tao League, they had all become absolute fanatics of Wu Qi, and their souls had become exactly the same as Wu Qi's divine soul. Amitabha. Abruptly, Wu Qi discovered this strange change. He was so shocked that he nearly mispronounced his lines. Subconsciously, he opened up his interstitial world and unleashed a stream of chaotic energy. Without putting up any resistance, the hundreds of billions of people on this planet were sent into Wu Qi's interstitial world, becoming the most devout believers in it. Wu Qi could sense the enormous power of faith offered to him by these fanatics at all times, and he could also sense the benefits brought to him by the improvement of his intelligence because of their existence. If there were hundreds of billions of fanatics on this planet, then how many fanatics did those experienced Buddhas from the Buddhist League, who could create 3,000 worlds, large and small, and each of them had many Buddhist kingdoms in their palms? And how many benefits did they gain from these fanatics? Suddenly, Wu Qi understood why both the Buddhist League and the Tao League kept human beings in captivity. It was not only because the power of faith could improve one's magical power, but also because of the existence of these fanatics. Their souls were like cheat processing chips that could speed up one's understanding of the heavenly Tao by thousands of times. Now, Wu Qi's perception of the heavenly Tao had improved by 10,000 times. It would take an ordinary peak-level gold immortal 10,000 years to comprehend the heavenly Tao, but he could fully comprehend it in just 1 year. His cultivation speed was 10,000 times that of an ordinary gold immortal. The advantage was so great, and the temptation was so great that those ancient immortals and Buddhas had to build mortal worlds to keep so many mortals at all costs. All of your schemes have benefited me in the end. Wu Qi gave a strange laugh. With a fierce wave of his 6 arms that were flashing with a strong golden light, the few energy veins on the planet below broke through the rock stratum and flew up, transforming into huge flood dragons that plunged into his interstitial world. Mortal worlds were places where immortals and Buddhas kept mortals, so the natural energy on these planets was not very strong. As a result, the quality of these few energy veins could only be said to be SOSO, not even as strong as those energy veins Wu Qi found on White Cloud Planet. Right after he extracted the energy veins, Wu Qi was about to plunder some famous mountains and rivers from this planet and put them into his interstitial world as decorations. But suddenly, a thunderclap rang out in the sky, and a great plume of purple mist came rushing toward Wu Qi's head from all directions. A beautiful immortal tune filled the sky, and an immeasurable amount of golden energy drooped down from the sky like a tassel, injecting into Wu Qi's body. A tremor ran through Wu Qi's body, and he was immediately immersed in an indescribable state. His body was shivering slightly, and gradually, a beam of light that had no color, but seemed to contain all the colors in the world, emerged from the depths of every cell in his body. A gentle breeze wrapped around him. Wu Qi's long hair fluttered in the wind, and he fell into a deep sleep like a sleeping baby. Under the influence of the boundless natural virtues, Wu Qi curled up like a baby in his mother's womb and fell into a deep sleep. A tremendous change was taking place in Wu Qi's divine soul and body. His body did not move at all, and the only thing that could let others know that a great change was happening inside his body was the dragon scales that kept popping out from the surface of his skin. Scales kept popping out and shattering. In the end, The scales that appeared on Wu Qi's skin were no longer pitch-black black dragon scales, but purple-golden dragon scales that glowed faintly like jade. The translucent dragon scales wrapped around Wu Qi's body, making him look sacred and solemn, filled with a suffocating, primordial aura. Hovering off to the side, Aobuzan's eyes went wide. He sighed in a low voice and shook his head. An evildoer. He has formed the body of the primordial divine dragon even earlier than Lao Tzu. How is Lao Tzu going to survive in the future? Chapter 800. Wu Qi had no time to pay attention to Aobuzan's complaints. An immeasurable amount of virtue entered his body. With billions of devout fanatics providing him with an enormous amount of faith power, it was as if he had billions of processing chips installed to help him understand the heavenly Tao. The virtue quickly transformed in his body. His body and divine soul were rapidly burning and transforming in the qi of heaven and earth, soaring toward an unfathomable realm. In the blink of an eye, 1,000 years had passed around Wu Qi. His chaotic divine eyes emitted a vast light that illuminated the void. Everything, including the stars, the human body, and the Kunwu swords, had turned into energy waves that pulsed rapidly and slowly. Energy, or natural energy, was the true face of this world. Pangu continent was also made of natural energy. It was the same in the 33 heavens, the 9 heavens, the ghost realm, the fiend realm, the demon realm, and all the minor worlds in the outer heavenly realms. Even the boundless primordial chaotic void, which gave birth to everything, was the same. The laws governing the use of natural energy constituted the so-called laws of the heavenly Tao of this world. If the heavenly Tao was a tree with deep roots and luxuriant leaves, then heaven immortals were the mortals under it. They used the power of the tree to ward off the wind, rain, and sunlight, and if they were hungry, they could pluck a few fruits from the tree. This was how heaven immortals used the power of the heavenly Tao. In the jungle of the heavenly Tao, heaven immortals were a group of primitive people who were still in the harvesting stage and could only passively use the power of the heavenly Tao. Gold immortals, on the other hand, had reached a deeper level of using the tree. They could cut down the branches of the tree, make them into sticks or bows, and leave the shelter of the tree to hunt wild beasts. They might be eaten by wild beasts, or they might be able to hunt down wild beasts and obtain delicious roasted meat. Meat, on the other hand, could give them stronger bodies, promote them to better develop their intelligence, and thus have a stronger overall strength. Gold immortals could even drill wood to produce fire, and trigger new energy patterns from wood, which gave them a certain creative ability in the heavenly Tao. But for primordial immortals, at their level, they could do more than simply make sticks and bows. They cut down trees and turned them into tall and magnificent palaces at their will. From then on, they no longer needed to shelter from the rain under the big trees. Their palaces made of big trees could provide them with better enjoyment. They used tree trunks as channels to guide water from afar to their homes, so that they could have a clear spring to quench their thirst while sitting at home. They used trees to make wheels, and from there, they had carriages. They could use their own strength to pull heavy objects that were far beyond their own limits, and easily move them around. They could even crush trees and use them to make snow-white paper. On the paper, they could write down their comprehension of the heavenly Tao or draw fascinating paintings. They had evolved from pure power into art, and art could not be erased. From then on, they would not be moved by anything, and ordinary tribulations would no longer be in their eyes. Had it not been for the monstrous war that destroyed their homes and burned their books and paintings, these primordial immortals would have been living peacefully in their fortified residences, without worrying about food or clothing, and spending their days writing and painting, living a carefree life. In that fleeting moment, Wu Qi understood what the heavenly Tao was, and what the heaven immortals, gold immortals, and primordial immortals were. As the yellow energy kept pouring into Wu Qi's divine soul, his divine soul had easily crossed the threshold of the primordial immortal realm. He now had all kinds of knowledge about how to touch the heavenly Tao, and he had understood all its mysteries. The problem was he did not have enough power to do all this. For a newborn child, even if he knew the art of making paper, even if he knew how to build palaces, Even if he knew how to put down tree trunks and let them rot to grow all kinds of mushrooms and fungi to fill his stomach, he did not have enough strength to do all these things. Wu Qi's magic power soared, but he was still far from becoming a basic 9th-tier primordial immortal. A peak-level gold immortal was powerful enough to move the stars in the sky and play with them as if they were balls. Moving mountains and draining seas was a piece of cake for him. But the magic power possessed by the weakest 9th-tier primordial immortal was 100,000 times more than that of a peak-level gold immortal. No more, no less, exactly 100,000 times. This was the biggest difficulty a peak-level gold immortal faced when stepping into the realm of primordial. Without a huge amount of energy stones and immortal stones to replenish energy, without a large number of immortal pills to replenish energy, and without tens of thousands of energy veins for him to absorb, even if a peak-level gold immortal had broken through the realm of primordial, he would never truly possess the overall strength of a primordial immortal. At the moment, Wu Qi was hovering in the void. He had used up all his energy stones, and there were no good energy veins in the mortal world for him to absorb. His divine soul had made the breakthrough, and he only needed to wait for his magic power to complete the transformation before he could transform into a real primordial immortal. If it were someone else, be it a gold immortal from the Tao League, a bodhisattva from the Buddhist League, or a human expert like Jizhua, who specialized in one cultivation technique, the power of faith that entered his body would be enough to support him to break through the threshold of primordial immortal. But, as Wu Qi cultivated both fleshly body and magic, the amount of energy he consumed was more than twice as much as they did. On top of that, his magic power was chaotic energy. In terms of quality, the chaotic energy cultivated with Scroll of Stealing was several times better than the magic power of a 9th-tier primordial immortal. If Wu Qi wanted to make both his fleshly body and magic power break through the realm of primordial at the same time, he needed more than 100 times the energy of an ordinary primordial immortal. As the yellow and black energy fell like rain, Wu Qi's divine soul expanded rapidly. He had come into contact with the real profound meaning of heaven and earth, but his fleshly body and magic power could not keep up with his divine soul. At the moment, Wu Qi was like 1,000 Einstein's brains stuffed into the body of a baby born with a disability. He had supreme wisdom but no corresponding power, and the feeling of emptiness and powerlessness made Wu Qi feel a sense of extreme hunger. Spiritual energy, spiritual energy, spiritual energy. Wu Qi needed a lot of it. Saliva sprayed out of the corner of his mouth uncontrollably. Perhaps he was the first immortal to drool when breaking through the realm of primordial. He dared not say that there would never be someone like him in the future, but he was definitely the first in history. His eyes were green with hunger, and his body was trembling. When his greedy eyes glanced at Ao Buzan, Jin Jiao, and the others, Ao Buzan and the others fled in panic. They had the illusion that Wu Qi would skin and eat them alive. The yellow and black energy continued to fall for 2 hours. During that time, Wu Qi's divine soul emitted a strong purple-gold light that shone for thousands of miles, and his cultivation base remained firmly in the realm of primordial. But his magic power was only increasing very slowly. The faith provided by hundreds of billions of fanatics who were on the verge of death and almost burning their souls was enough for any ordinary immortal to form a primordial body, but it was far from enough for Wu Qi. The difference was dozens of times, and he needed dozens of times more energy to make up for it. Wu Qi's body was trembling violently. Gnashing his teeth, he turned to look at the rapidly vibrating core of the fiend-slaying sword formation. There were 8 primordial immortals, including Buddha Futu. Buddha Futu was protected by the pagoda and could not touch him, but if he could devour the energy essence of the other 7 primordial immortals, it would be enough for Wu Qi to make up for the magic power he needed and successfully achieve the realm of primordial. Wu Qi let out a long howl, and as he was about to activate the sword formation to kill the trapped people, his divine soul suddenly trembled, and the source of his soul at the core of his enormous divine soul suddenly froze. Wu Qi's vision darkened, and he suddenly found himself in his spiritual ocean. A faint shadow was sitting cross-legged amidst the boundless purple-gold aura. Upon seeing Wu Qi, the shadow sighed faintly and said, "Your aptitude is really mediocre, and your means are really mediocre. It's taken you so many years to step into the realm of Tao reasoning. Don't you think you've disgraced the legacy of the scroll of stealing?" Wu Qi recognized the shadow. It was this shadow who had given him the scroll of stealing on his way to Myriad Immortals' planet, giving him the opportunity to practice cultivation. He did not know what the so-called realm of Tao reasoning was, so he just dropped to his knees respectfully and said, "Master." The shadowy figure sighed softly, shook his head and said, "Too slow, too slow. Even with the scroll of stealing, a supreme technique that can shock the heaven and earth and make ghosts and deities weep, and even forced me to be hunted down by those shameless old men, it still took you so many years to step into the realm of Tao reasoning." After counting with his fingers for a long while, the shadow sighed faintly and said, "Years ago, after I comprehended the essence of the scroll of stealing, it only took me 7 years to step into the realm of Tao reasoning and 62 years to step into the realm of Tao breaking. 360 years later, when I was about to step into the realm of Tao fusing, I was hunted by all those shameless old fools of Tao realm. I had to flee for 3 periods, and in the end, my life and soul were destroyed." He stretched out his leg and gave Wu Qi a kick, then sighed and said, "Do the math yourself. How long did it take you to step into the realm of Tao reasoning? Stupid, I've never seen anyone as stupid as you." The kick from the shadow was just a shadow, and Wu Qi did not feel it at all. The shadow was just a shadow, and it did not have any strength. He stared blankly at the shadow, smiled bitterly and said, "If I may ask, Master, didn't your soul and soul vanish long ago?" The shadow nodded slowly and said, "This is the last bit of energy I have left. If you can't step into the realm of Tao reasoning within 60 years, I'll abandon you completely, so that you can't get the true legacy of the scroll of stealing. I'd rather the scroll of stealing be buried forever than let a fool tarnish my former reputation." Wu Qi's heart twitched. He roughly understood what the shadow was saying. If Wu Qi still could not step into the realm of primordial after 60 years, the last bit of energy left by the shadow would dissipate, and the so-called true legacy of the scroll of stealing would not fall into Wu Qi's hands. At the same time, cold sweat broke out from Wu Qi's back. 60 years to become a primordial immortal, and you still think it's too slow? Among the many primordial immortals in the 9 heavens world, which one of them did not spend dozens of eons of hard work to step into the realm of primordial? It was true that one could become a primordial immortal quickly in the mortal worlds, but how many of them were so lucky? Before that, they needed to have the cultivation base of a peak-level gold immortal, and that would take a long time, measured in eons. The shadow spent 7 years to become a primordial immortal, and then the realm of Tao breaking and Tao fusing. Wu Qi's head was spinning, and he felt as if he had heard something incredible. After scolding Wu Qi for a while, the shadow sighed bitterly and said, "Don't waste time. I need to teach you the last bit of the essence of the scroll of stealing, and it's time for me to leave. Alas, those shameless old fools, when you step into the realm of Tao fusing in the future, you must avenge me." He reached out and pressed a hand on the top of Wu Qi's head. A wisp of pure divine sense was slowly absorbed and digested by Wu Qi's divine soul. Chapter 801. But now, the aura of the great thief had truly fused with Wu Qi's divine soul. At the same time, he compared the information he got from Mouse Bai with the information he got from the fragmented memories of Buddha Fudu. Most of the almighty experts in the realm of Tao breaking and Tao reasoning had fallen in the past apocalypse of heaven and earth. Wu Qi's heart could not help but twitch. So many ancient almighty experts had fallen so easily. No wonder the oracles of the Directorate of Celestials were so extravagant as to use the corpses of ancient Buddhas to make a Vichy incense. 100 or even 1,000 phoenixes suddenly turned into old hens hugging their nests. Moreover, they were the kind of old hens that had lost their reproductive function and couldn't even lay an egg. This kind of thing would make all the almighty beings worried and worried that they might be the next one. With such a weak strength, Mouse White had successfully obtained the 9-fire pill from the hands of such a big shot. Because of what he had done, Mouse White had gained the appreciation of a wisp of spiritual energy that contained the law of grand thief when the world was created. Because of that, he had successfully fused with this wisp of thief energy. Where were the cave abodes that Mouse By had opened up to store treasures? The Tao Breakers and Divine Immortals were lucky enough to find a few stones in the river, which they built into stone platforms that could survive in the raging river. But, unlike the Tao reasoning experts, they had the ability to break through the waves and resist the onslaught of the waves. The waves were the will of the heavenly Tao, and they could break through the onslaught of the heavenly Tao. That was why they were called Tao Breakers. But there was a limit to how many waves they could break through. If an irresistible natural disaster came, they would still be crushed by the endless waves and whirlpools, and their stone platforms would be destroyed. Tao fusing experts and chaotic immortals no longer needed the help of external objects, as they had already transformed into flowing water. No matter how the river rolled, they were already part of the waves. They could use the power of the waves to destroy their opponents, but they themselves were unharmed. This was the terror of Tao fusing experts. Unless the river dried up one day, and all the water disappeared without a trace, Tao fusing experts were invincible. Mouse By was born with a very poor foundation. Even if he had a pair of wings, how good could an ordinary mouse's foundation be? Although it had gained sentience, Mouse White was still the kind of creature that controlled its daily actions instinctively. It didn't know how to use its brain at all. Now that he had the cultivation base of a peak heaven immortal, he felt that he was very impressive. That was why he decided to steal the 9-fire pill, which was a Tao-breaking expert. If Wu Qi could not reach the realm of primordial within 60 years, he would never be fated with this aura for the rest of his life. With the infusion of his soul sense, a scene of primitive times unfolded in front of Wu Qi. There were tens of thousands of almighty experts in the primordial world who were born at the same time as Great Saint Pangu, and millions of innate deities who were born after the world was created. In accordance with the heavenly Tao, countless living beings had emerged from the fusion of various innate auras when Pangu continent was created, and that was the origin of many divine beasts and fowls. Even the weakest of these connate life forms were at the Tao reasoning realm, because they themselves were products of the great Tao. In addition to all the innate creatures, the combination of the heavenly Tao's opportunity and the acquired natural energy on Pangu continent, together with the intentional or unintentional creation of those almighty experts, had given birth to countless living beings in just tens of thousands of years. The Shadow's true form was born in that era. When he was born, he only had the cultivation base of the Jindan realm. In that era, he was just an ant among ants, a germ on an ant's foot, and no one would pay any attention to him. After stealing unscrupulously for 7 years, Mouse White stepped into the realm of primordial from the peak of heaven immortal realm. To become a primordial expert in just 7 years was sensational even in the ancient times. But that was not all. It took him another few decades to easily step into the realm of Tao breaking from the realm of Tao reasoning, and then another few hundred years to fuse the realm of Tao fusing from the realm of Tao breaking. Compared to the current cultivation system, the realm of force was the overall strength of those below heaven immortal realm, a realm that relied purely on brute force. If he had not met Wu Qi, who knew when the scroll of stealing would have found a new successor? The realm of true was the collective name for heaven immortals and gold immortals. They could borrow or use a little bit of the power of morality, but they were still not qualified. A phoenix suddenly becoming an old hen hugging its nest. This matter would make many almighty beings rejoice in the misfortune of others to watch the show. As his divine sense slowly poured into Wu Qi's divine soul, more information came pouring in. In the ancient times, meridians, such as the 7 stealing heaven meridians, which could innately extract natural energy from the outside world for one's own use, were common. At least, Mouse White had met no less than 1,000 living beings with 7 stealing heaven meridians, including turtles, crabs, and lobsters. However, after Mouse By was encircled and killed, those almighty experts had probably used some kind of destructive method on the 7 stealing heaven meridians, making the last bit of energy that Mouse By had condensed into a jade medallion had been tossing and turning in the mortal world for countless years, but it still hadn't found a suitable inheritor. The shadow did not have any great ambition. At that time, all living beings in the ancient times had extremely long lives, and even a tiny being like him had a lifespan of several eons. Just like that, he went around all day looking for spirit herbs and spirit grasses to gnaw on, living a carefree life. Naturally, an alliance was formed to hunt down Mouse White. Led by a few fearsome legendary existences of the realm of Tao fusing, all the existences of the realm of Tao breaking and Tao reasoning brought countless underlings to hunt Mouse White. All the almighty experts in the universe went after Mouse White at the same time. Although he had already reached the peak of the realm of Tao breaking, and could step into the realm of Tao fusing at any time, he was still beaten to death. He only had time to spare a bit of energy to condense the jade medallion, which he passed on to the Tao fusing, and randomly threw it into the vast void. It was not long after Pangu created the world. On the newly born Pangu continent, there were countless innate experts of all kinds. It could be said that primordial immortals were everywhere, and gold immortals were as common as dogs. At that time, there was no such thing as primordial immortals and gold immortals. Those almighty experts simply divided their overall strength into the realm of Tao, the realm of True, and the realm of Force. Putting aside the fact that Mouse White's crazy speed of improvement had attracted the attention of many ancient almighty experts, how did he improve so rapidly along the way? Basically, all the almighty experts of the Great Desolate Era had suffered under his hands. If it wasn't their own people who were harmed by him, then it was their descendants who were cleansed by him. There were even a large number of Tao reasoning-level almighty experts who were forcibly turned from lofty and tyrannical existences into ordinary mortals. As time went by, and no one knew how many spirit herbs he had harmed, Mouse White suddenly gained sentience and began to consciously eat the items of those almighty experts. From the dregs of alchemy pills refined by the almighty experts, the residues of tea leaves poured away, and the cores and bones of fruits discarded as food, Mouse White gradually accumulated an enormous amount of energy. His cultivation base slowly grew, and in the end, he had a cultivation base equivalent to that of today's peak-level heaven immortals. Who were those almighty experts who joined forces to hunt down Mouse White? What were the countless cultivation manuals that Mouse White had plundered in the past? The true form of the shadow was just an ordinary white mouse. The only difference between him and his kind was that he was born with a pair of wings on his back, which allowed him to leap as if he was flying, and his speed was comparable to those supreme divine birds. This was also his only special ability. Apart from that, his true form was just an ordinary white mouse formed from acquired energy, a white mouse who liked to steal food from everywhere. Many almighty experts would grin and sigh behind their backs when 10 phoenixes suddenly turned into old hens hugging their nests. Compared to Mouse White's behavior in those years, Wu Qi was simply a moral model who adhered to the 5 stresses, 4 beauties, and 3 passions. With a cultivation base of peak-level heaven immortals, Mouse White was bold enough to challenge a Tao-breaking expert. But he had succeeded. Tao reasoning experts and primordial immortals were swimmers in the river. They were adept at swimming, rising and falling along with the waves, and were the so-called tide riders. But once the water surged beyond the limit of their ability, these Tao reasoning experts would be knocked over by the waves, and all their cultivation base would go down the drain. This was the origin of the shadow, and this was the origin of the scroll of stealing. The realm of Tao was divided into 3 levels: Tao reasoning, Tao breaking, and Tao fusing. Using the levels that immortals were familiar with today, they were primordial, divine heaven, and primordial. This was the first thread of innate thieving aura. Mouse White had passed on this aura to Wu Qi. With the injection of his divine sense, more and more profound mysteries of the scroll of stealing began to fuse with Wu Qi's divine soul. Wu Qi was not in a hurry to read the real essence of this part of the scroll of stealing. His attention was focused on another part of the information. The first thread of innate ghost energy created the ghost realm, and the first thread of innate fiend energy created the fiend realm. In the ghost realm, the fiend realm, and the demon realm, there were many primordial immortals. And this thread of innate thieving aura had completely fused with Mouse White's body, which was equivalent to an entire realm. If the heavenly Tao was compared to a river, then Force and True Realm experts were just nobodies who fetched water from the riverside. They could see the river, but they were still far away from it. Perhaps they could scoop up 2 or 3 buckets of water from the river and drink it, but that was their limit. All kinds of information about the primeval times kept pouring into his mind, including the information about the Wahuang clan, who created the human race, and a few other existences of Tao fusing realm. Wu Qi flipped through the information like it was a priceless treasure. Although the information existed in his spiritual ocean in the form of a spirit body, Wu Qi could not help but gasp. The means of these people were too unimaginable. Even though Wu Qi was now a primordial immortal, he was still amazed by their magical means. They stood before him like a towering mountain, and Wu Qi could only look up and exclaim in awe. After obtaining the innate thieving aura, Mouse White had comprehended the general principles of the Scroll of Stealing in just 3 years, and then spent another 3 years to comprehend all kinds of unimaginable techniques. Therefore, he began his grand act of thieving. If one's root was not good, he would steal the root of others. If one's comprehension ability was not good, he would steal the comprehension ability of others. If one's blood essence was not good, he would steal the blood essence of others. At first, he stole stealthily, but as his cultivation base improved, he simply squatted on the street with a big stick in his hand. When he saw a target that he liked, he would knock it over, then strip the victim naked and steal what he liked at will. When the primeval times first began, those little things of Force and True Realm were even weaker than ants. They were the kind of existences that people would not give a second look at if they were placed on the side of the road, and would not deliberately trample them to death. The real almighty experts were all in the Tao realm, experts who could twist the void within a certain range. Countless information slowly poured into Wu Qi's mind, and finally, a hazy and mysterious aura was injected into his divine soul. Wu Qi felt a chill run down his spine, and he quickly stopped thinking about it. Chapter 802. Take the Kunwu swords for example. Wu Qi only had 108 Kunwu swords now. But as long as Wu Qi digested them, fused with them, and fused the wisp of their most original existence into his divine soul, as long as Wu Qi had enough strength, 108 Kunwu swords would be nothing to him. With just a thought, he could easily obtain 108 million Kunwu swords. The shadowy figure vanished, and Wu Qi's divine soul merged with his fleshly body once again. A terrible hunger struck him instantly. As Wu Qi laughed, the bloodlines of over 100 divine beasts and birds in the chaotic energy exploded with a deafening rumble. An enormous amount of energy poured out of these bloodlines, shocking even Wu Qi, and quickly fused with the chaotic energy around Wu Qi. The existence imprints of these bloodlines were extracted by Wu Qi's divine soul, which had fused with the thievery energy, turning into invisible waves and fusing with Wu Qi's divine soul. 3 blood centipede swords. This was the limit that Wu Qi could manifest with his current overall strength. Moreover, the last blood centipede sword's luster was dim. Obviously, the energy that made up its body was extremely scarce, and its power was greatly reduced. Plants took sunlight and water to grow luxuriantly. This was a thievery. The shadowy figure nodded slowly and said, I've not helped you in vain. But remember, a petty thief will never become a great one. Since you have cultivated the Scroll of Stealing, you have to go all out and plunder. What is a thievery? A thievery uses the most direct and violent means to plunder everything that they can. A thievery flees 10,000 miles immediately once they fail, so that no one can catch a trace of them. A thievery must learn to hold a grudge, learn to be tough, and never be discouraged. If you suffer a loss from any target, next time, you must make sure to strip him clean, even his neighbors and friends. This is the mentality that a thievery should have. In the past, when the shadowy figure was at his strongest, he had devoured the 3 trigrams seal of primal belonging to an almighty Tao fusing expert. Later, when he was besieged by countless almighty experts, he could only form 108 3 trigram seals at one time at the same time. When the 108 primal treasures of primal attacked the original owner of the trigram seal, His face was swollen, and he had to flee in panic. That battle was the most satisfying for the shadowy figure. His eyes darting from side to side, Wu Qi instantly fixed his eyes on the natural phenomena medallion. The scroll of stealing allowed one to understand the principle of thievery, so that one could steal things more easily, faster, and more efficiently. What was the purpose of this? Just to strengthen oneself, so that one could steal things better and faster. Then what is the target of stealing foreign objects? There was no goal. This was the law of heaven and earth contained in the first strand of thievery energy. Just like the other laws of heaven and earth, it existed, so he did it. As for why he did it, he didn't care. Immortals harvesting the world's spiritual energy to achieve an immortal physique was theft. The fiend slaying sword formation deployed by 108 Kunwu swords, or the fiend slaying sword formation deployed by 108 million Kunwu swords, which was more powerful? When their cultivations were at the same level, an additional Kunwu sword would increase the power of the sword formation. If Wu Qi had tens of thousands of Kunwu swords in his hand and laid out a sword formation at this moment, apart from Buddha Fudu, all the other primordial immortals would have been killed by him. Others are like men. To take grain to fill their stomachs is thievery. To drill wood to make fire to keep warm is thievery. To gather cotton and silk to cover their bodies is thievery. However, this was enough to satisfy Wu Qi. He said happily, "Wonderful, truly wonderful. What should I swallow next?" The mysterious man nodded satisfyingly, then murmured in a low voice, "Gone, gone, my real body has been dead for so many years, finally I can rest. How tragic was it to be annihilated? Remember the list of enemies I gave you, and if you have the chance, help me take everything they have." He wanted to completely possess them, and fuse them into his body with the ultimate technique of the scroll of stealing, the myriad harmonization grand magic. From then on, they would be Wu Qi, but Wu Qi was not just them. With a single thought, Wu Qi could activate their power with just a wave of his hand, and that would be much faster and better than relying on the power of these external objects. Then, the mysterious man told Wu Qi the last bit of enlightenment he had gained, then severely criticized Wu Qi for his mistakes and omissions. In the mysterious man's view, the power source of these external objects was important, but their actual existence was meaningless. Fusing them into one's body was the best choice. Just like how Wu Qi had cultivated so many cultivation techniques at the same time, and possessed the seeds of a few innate divine flames at the same time, this was the embryonic form of the myriad harmonization grand magic. As long as the chaotic energy was activated, Wu Qi could simulate any incantation and release any innate divine flame at will. However, these things were usually fused with Wu Qi's chaotic energy and could not show themselves. A sad cry rang out, as all the soul power of the Taotai beast soul that Wu Qi had fused with was devoured by Wu Qi's divine soul, and the mark of existence of the source of the soul was fused with Wu Qi's divine soul. If there was a need in the future, Wu Qi would naturally be able to manifest another Taoye soul. All the living beings in the world were stealing external objects to strengthen themselves. In fact, all the billions of living beings in the world were the thieves of the world. The so-called Great Tao had always been a matter of words. With the mysterious man's guidance, Wu Qi felt as if everything around him had been brightened up. Suddenly, he understood many problems that he hadn't noticed before. He pondered for a while, then threw his head back and laughed out loud. That's right, the ghost realm is formed from a single strand of innate ghost qi. My body has fused with a strand of innate thieving qi, so why can't I form a world myself? Wu Qi's heart turned sour. He bowed respectfully to the mysterious man for 9 times. The mysterious man laughed, then suddenly disintegrated into a tiny stream of light and slowly faded away. After the mysterious man had sent all the information and the strand of thieving qi to Wu Qi, his body had become almost transparent. He breathed out a sigh of relief, then looked at Wu Qi with a satisfied smile and said, "You still remember to call me master?" Natural energies. Wu Qi needed an enormous amount of natural energies to satisfy the needs of his body. However, the myriad harmonization grand magic was a step further. It didn't require Wu Qi to store these things in his chaotic energy. Instead, after he devoured their natural energies, all he needed to do was to fuse their existence into his divine soul, then he would be able to form all kinds of magical arts. In this way, the chaotic energy in Wu Qi's body would be purer and more agile. Unlike now, when he was manipulating the natural energies, he still had to consider the interference of the various bloodlines and innate divine fire seeds that existed in the natural energies. Bright lights flashed in Wu Qi's eyes as he said in a deep voice, "When my cultivation reaches a certain level, even this interstitial world in my body will be useless to me. I'll just devour it and absorb it. I am a world myself, why would I need to nurture another world in my body? My body is my own world, and I don't need any external force." After reading the true essence of the scroll of stealing and all the mystic arts in the myriad harmonization grand magic, Wu Qi suddenly opened his mouth and sprayed out a stream of divine flame of great tranquility. The pure and serene divine flame enveloped the planet in the distance, which had given birth to over 1 trillion people, and burned it to its heart's content. Thieving was nothing more than borrowing power from other things through various means. Another example was the bloodlines of over 100 divine beasts and fowls in Wu Qi's body. These bloodlines were fused into the chaotic energy, and once Wu Qi had a thought, he could immediately manipulate the power of these bloodlines and transform into these divine beasts and fowls. This also had the shadow of the myriad harmonization grand magic. Humans had used Pangu's sacred energy to create their powerful fleshly bodies, and that was thieving. The true horror of the scroll of stealing had officially been unveiled today. Taking a deep breath, the mysterious man said in a deep voice, "Thieving is formed by gathering the spirits of the heaven and earth. For thieving, one fleshly body is enough. You can borrow other external objects, but you don't need to borrow anything at all." Wu Qi knelt and bowed respectfully to the mysterious man. Although I was unconscious at that time, I still remember what happened outside. If not for Master's help, I would have become a wisp of ash long ago. How could I have achieved what I have today? Ferocious beasts prey on the weak to reproduce, and that is what thieving is. Ordinary humans only stole some crops and livestock meat, which was why it was easy for them to die. Immortals, on the other hand, steal the natural energy and the great Tao of heaven and earth, and that is why they can live forever. Mortals could only be regarded as petty thieves, while immortals plundered unscrupulously. Different means led to different results. Glancing around, Wu Qi raised his hand, and the blood centipede sword fell obediently into Wu Qi's hand. In the blink of an eye, it was devoured by Wu Qi with the myriad harmonization grand magic. Then, Wu Qi waved his hand. A beam of blood-red light shot out of his fingertip, and a brand new blood centipede sword flew out, followed by a second and a third. Scroll of stealing. What was the meaning of thieving? An almighty expert who once roamed freely in the ancient times could not avoid ending up like this. Wu Qi felt sad and frightened at the sight of this. He could not allow himself to end up like this. Before he truly possessed the strength to do whatever he wanted, it was enough for him and the people around him as petty thieves. The energy emanated from each of them was equivalent to the combined energy of hundreds of peak-level gold immortals. Wu Qi did not expect that the energy from the bloodlines of these divine beasts and birds would be so enormous. But when he thought about it, it was understandable. As he knew on Earth, if an ordinary stone was completely transformed into energy, that is, into the so-called energy, the energy released in an instant was enough to shake an entire continent. In just the blink of an eye, the entire planet was transformed into pure energy and poured into Wu Qi's body. The terrible hunger was immediately reduced. He opened his mouth, and the supreme treasure crafted by the sacred emperor, Zhuanshu, vanished into thin air. Kunwu sword, blood centipede sword, dark Yin celestial tower, the soul of Taotai, the natural phenomena medallion, and the pearl of Shen. What was the point of keeping these things? They were also external objects, the aggregations of natural energy. Since they were aggregations of natural energy, they were objects that could be plundered. Devour them, digest them, fuse with them, and fuse their existence into his own divine soul. From then on, Wu Qi would be the Kunwu sword, the blood centipede sword, the Dark Yin celestial tower, the soul of Taotai, the natural phenomena medallion, and the pearl of Shen. He was like a hero or a peerless overlord in the mortal world, leading millions of soldiers to conquer the world and unify the world. In the end, he ascended to the high throne and ruled over the world. He borrowed the power of others, and took away the lives and power of others to achieve his own success. This was still a thief. After disintegrating the bloodlines of these divine beasts and birds, Wu Qi gave another loud cry, and the seeds of the divine flame of order, the divine flame of void, the divine flame of great tranquility, the divine flame of phoenix, and the other innate divine flames disintegrated at the same time, unleashing a great amount of energy to replenish Wu Qi's needs. At the same time, Wu Qi fused their existence into his divine soul. After that, with just a thought in his mind, these incredibly powerful and magical divine flames could be unleashed naturally, as if Wu Qi himself was made of these flames. Wu Qi chuckled and said in a low voice, "This is a real thief, and this is the real scroll of stealing." Chapter 803. The essence of Scroll of Stealing was the myriad harmonization grand magic, but the scariest thing about it was that thread of thievery energy. As Wu Qi had cultivated the 5 elements sword technique of heaven-breaking sword sect, it was like a butcher had a kitchen knife in his hand. He had also cultivated the cultivation technique of white cloud immortal sect, and it was like a butcher had a sharp sword made of steel. As for the Inferno Hell Fiend scripture, Dark Yin water scripture, and other cultivation techniques, they were like a butcher who had a well-tempered sword. Undoubtedly, the Song of Gale, Dragon Transformation Script, and Dragon Kill were like a butcher who had suddenly obtained a submachine gun. With the Book of Ancient God regarding the Tao of primordial runes inherited from Scroll of Stealing, the primordial Tao of divinity he obtained from Princess Zhonglu, and the great light indestructible Amitabha treasure scripture cultivated by Lord Buddha, Amitabha, he was no different from a cruel butcher who had suddenly obtained a heavy machine gun with unlimited ammunition, or a heavy cannon with unlimited ammunition. But, after the thread of thievery energy fused with Wu Qi's divine soul, it had changed Wu Qi into a bloodthirsty, cruel, and murderous butcher. He had suddenly obtained an infinite ammunition depot, which was filled with nuclear bombs that weighed hundreds of millions of tons. On top of that, all the nuclear bombs were equipped with launchers, and with a flick of his finger, they would be launched and blow up the world. The Natural Phenomena Medallion was a supreme treasure personally crafted by the sacred emperor, Zhuanxu. Once it was activated, it could transform into a world. When Wu Qi swallowed it, it only took him 7 days and 7 nights to completely transform it into pure energy and fuse it into his body. A treasure of this grade was extremely difficult to destroy. Even if an ordinary primordial immortal wanted to destroy it, he or she would have to spend thousands or even tens of thousands of years to slowly refine it with the flame of an alchemy cauldron. But it only took Wu Qi 7 days and 7 nights to refine it, and not only did he destroy it, but he had completely turned it into a stream of energy and fused it into his body. The medallion had also fused with Wu Qi's divine soul, and all the secrets of the restrictive spells and formations contained in it were mastered by his divine soul. With just a thought, Wu Qi would become a human-shaped natural phenomena medallion, and with every move he made he would be able to unleash the power of earth, water, fire, wind. The extraordinary treasure had provided Wu Qi with an enormous amount of energy, which was roughly equivalent to the magic power and energy essence of 100,000 peak-tier gold immortals. It had greatly alleviated Wu Qi's terrible hunger. In for a penny, in for a pound. Wu Qi opened his mouth and swallowed the pearl, completely digesting it. In a pound, in a pound, in a pound, in a pound, in and Shen Wu medallion and Shen pearl, Wu Shen and was spirit. After a brief moment of pondering, Wu Qi swallowed Dark Yin celestial tower as well. The tower was crafted by Dayu's Directorate of Celestials at the cost of countless rare materials and the joint efforts of many supreme oracles, and Wu Qi had even embedded many rare items in it to enhance its power. Wu Qi opened his mouth and swallowed the tower, then unleashed a vast, hazy aura from his divine soul to wrap it up. Immediately, a faint gleam rippled across the surface of the tower. With the help of the thieving energy, it only took Wu Qi less than 3 days to completely refine such an extraordinary treasure, including the star pearl and other treasures in it, which he had turned into energy and fused into his body. When the existence mark of Dark Ean's celestial tower was fused with Wu Qi's divine soul, when Wu Qi opened his eyes, a vast amount of starlight poured out of them, which turned into numerous tiny stars and wheeled rapidly around him, forming a mysterious celestial formation. An obscure fluctuation of time spread out of Wu Qi's body. Wherever it passed, the flow of time slowed down rapidly, from a speed of 1,000 times to 1,500 times. Ao Buzan and the others, who were guarding beside Wu Qi, could no longer bear the slow flow of time. Their bodies were stiff and their eyes were blank. Not only their normal physiological activities, but even their thoughts had almost come to a standstill. Wu Qi laughed. He beckoned at the 18 blood-draining celestial fiends, then opened his mouth and swallowed them as well. The myriad returnants could transform anything into anything. Now that he had such a wonderful cultivation technique, he naturally had to deal with these blood-draining celestial fiends as well. After transforming them into energy to improve his cultivation base, he would be able to manifest new blood-draining celestial fiends at any time when he needed them. At that time, they would no longer be the 18 blood-draining celestial fiends of the original Blood Sea Grand Magic, but Wu Qi could have as many as he wanted. The 18 blood-draining celestial fiends had devoured countless rare minerals and the blood essence of countless immortals and living beings. After that, Wu Qi turned them into energy and fused them into his own body. An enormous amount of energy rushed out of them, turning into 18 dragons that surged restlessly in his body. Wu Qi took a deep breath and fused all the energy into his body. His empty body was instantly half full, and the terrible hunger was now bearable. After driving the enormous energy in his body to circulate according to the various cultivation techniques he had learned for a while and familiarizing himself with them, Wu Qi gave a cold snort and rapidly performed incantation gestures with both hands, controlling the fiend-slaying sword formation to spin and disperse all the primordial experts in the formation, including Buddha Futu. With a sway of his body, Wu Qi stepped into the core of the fiend-slaying sword formation and came to the side of the fiend immortal. As soon as he entered the formation, he saw countless dazzling stars, ranging from tens of thousands of miles to hundreds of thousands of miles in diameter, circling the boundless starry sky. As far as his eyes could see, all he could see were stars emitting dazzling light. The terrible star power had condensed into 9 silvery swords in the void, wheeling slowly in the rhythm of the Taiji, Yin and Yang, for divisions, and 8 trigrams. Every time the 9 tens of thousands of miles long swords circled in the air, an invisible killing intent would sprinkle down from the sky, turning into a meteor shower, a comet, or even a silver black hole, smashing down on the trapped demon immortals. The almighty fiend expert, who was tightly surrounded by 72 black banners and surrounded by 7 huge fiends, sat firmly on a black cloud, gnashing his teeth and roaring furiously at the void. It was unknown which cultivation technique of the Fiend League this primordial expert practiced. Although it was a technique of the Tao League, he had manifested an avatar with 3 heads, 6 arms, and 9 eyes. A pitch-black cloud wheeled over his head, inside of which was a black lotus that emitted plumes of black smoke that swept in all directions, shattering all the attacks that came raining down from above. But the power of the formation was so strong that although he could protect himself, he could not get out of it. As soon as Wu Qi stepped into the formation, he immediately exercised the great light indestructible Amitabha treasure scripture and transformed into the golden avatar of the Buddha with 4 faces and 6 arms. He roared and waved his 6 arms at the same time, unleashing a monstrous golden Buddhist light that transformed into countless layers of sandalwood incense and vaguely evil-vanquishing Buddhist light that shot toward the fiend immortal. The divine power of the Buddhist League was the nemesis of demons and ghosts, not to mention the supreme scripture cultivated by the Lord Buddha, Amitabha. Even though the fiend immortal's cultivation base was much stronger than Wu Qi's, the black smoke he unleashed still could not withstand the attack of the fiend light, and more than 70% of it was broken like boiling water splashed on snow. Wu Qi performed the immovable fundamental incantation with both hands and recited the mantra of the Buddhist League. At the same time, balls of golden flame shot out of his mouth, which turned into thunderbolts and smashed down. Caught off guard, the 72 black banners around the fiend immortal were hit by the Buddhist League's devil-subduing divine thunder. As the saying goes, evil never triumphs over good. The pure Buddhist divine power blew the banners to pieces. Countless wisps of black smoke rose from the banners, but in the blink of an eye, they were shredded to pieces by the silver starlight. The fiend-slaying sword formation rotated rapidly, and the 9 Kunwu swords shot out of the void and hacked at the fiend immortal. The fiend immortal cried out and hurriedly pulled out an immortal artifact shaped like the top of a human's head, which transformed into a cloud of black smoke to protect his body. Wu Qi cried out as well. Reciting the mantra of the Buddhist League, he plunged down from the sky with the momentum of Mount Tai, his 6 arms smashing randomly on the black smoke like gangsters fighting on the street. Wherever the Buddhist light passed, the black smoke disintegrated, and the 9 Kunwu swords easily pierced into the much thinner black smoke and tore the fiend immortal to pieces. Then, Wu Qi punched the fiend immortal's forehead, sending a mighty Buddhist power into his spiritual ocean and severely wounding his immortal soul. The thievery energy transformed into a dense gray energy that burst out of his fist, wrapped around the fiend immortal's immortal soul, and swallowed it. Activating the myriad harmonization grand magic, Wu Qi opened his mouth and sucked away all the fiend immortal's magic power and energy essence. Half a month later, Wu Qi let out a long roar and flew up into the sky, striding into another part of the formation. A trapped Buddha was sitting cross-legged on a jade lotus throne, facing the rain of starlight swords as if nothing had happened. With the avatar of Amitabha, Wu Qi quietly appeared in front of the Buddha, and with a casual wave of his hand, shattered the rain of starlight swords, and even the entire fiend-slaying sword formation trembled violently. The trapped Buddha was overjoyed. He hurriedly rose to his feet on the lotus throne, retracted his divine ability, put his palms together, and bowed respectfully to Wu Qi. "Greetings, Buddha." Wu Qi did not give the Buddha a chance to finish. 2 blood centipede swords shot out of his nostrils, circled around the Buddha's head, and hacked him until he looked like a bloody gourd. Then he grabbed the dead Buddha with both hands, and the golden body of the Buddha abruptly turned into a golden stream that rushed into his body. The myriad harmonization grand magic began to work crazily again. 10 days later, Wu Qi came to another trapped Buddha. 5 days later, the avatar of Amitabha with 4 faces and 6 arms appeared next to the last trapped Buddha, except Buddha Futu. A fragrant wind and auspicious mist poured out of the fiend-slaying sword formation. With the help of the magic power and energy essence of the 3 Buddhas, as well as the energy transformed from their Buddhist treasures, Wu Qi smoothly stepped into the realm of primordial. A 9th-tier primordial immortal was already a real upper-class figure in this universe, and no gold immortals or heaven immortals could compare with him. The power of the fiend-slaying sword formation suddenly skyrocketed 100-fold. With a sway of his body, Wu Qi was wrapped in the divine flame of great tranquility and emanating the pure and rich immortal energy of the innate pure yang universal scripture. Then, he walked leisurely to the side of a trapped primordial immortal. The 3 poor primordial immortals had been sneakily attacked by Wu Qi and had their heads chopped off by the blood centipede sword. Now, when they suddenly saw immortal Ding Jun, an important minister of the celestial court, appear in front of them, their first reaction was the same as that of those Buddhas. They hastily rose to their feet and bowed. Therefore, within 10 days, all 3 primordial immortals had become Wu Qi's prey, and the Tao techniques they cultivated had become Wu Qi's private collection. With the myriad harmonization grand magic and the thievery energy, Wu Qi's overall strength had improved in just 1 month, which was equivalent to the magic power and cultivation base that ordinary primordial immortals could achieve after 3 eons of arduous cultivation. The power of the fiend-slaying sword formation grew stronger once again, and with a little reluctance, Wu Qi strode up to Buddha Futu. Chapter 804. All the silver swords transformed from 99 Kunwu swords plunged down at the same time, aiming at the spot where Wu Qi's fist had struck. The countless stars in the formation dimmed abruptly as all the star power in the entire formation was focused on this one strike. The 99 Kunwu swords joined their heads to their tails and turned into a silver beam of light that followed Wu Qi's fist and hit the pagoda in an instant. Without hesitation, Wu Qi swallowed the lotus of transcending calamity, then nodded at Buddha Futu and said with a smile, "Not enough, I want more. Monk, your status is so noble that ordinary people can't compare to you. To put it bluntly, hand over everything valuable you have except this pagoda, and I'll make sure you leave this place safe and sound." As soon as he said that, Buddha Futu suddenly realized that the topic was not right. He laughed dryly, took off his kasaya and monk robe, and threw them to Wu Qi. Then he obediently swore an oath according to Wu Qi's words. In the fiend-slaying sword formation, 99 huge silver swords were spinning slowly around a golden pagoda that stood about 100 miles tall. The supreme sword energy mixed with the great power of the stars cut away the infinite Buddhist light emanating from the pagoda layer by layer. But the pagoda kept pouring out golden torrents, and no matter how hard the sword formation tried, it could not touch the pagoda. His body grew to a height of 100 feet, then he clenched his fists and threw a punch at the pagoda that protected Buddha Futu. After a moment of silence, Wu Qi quickly rubbed the thumb, index finger, and middle finger of his right hand. Then he smiled and said to Buddha Futu, "Well, I swear that as long as you show me enough treasures that can tempt me, I'll immediately open the formation and let you leave. What do you think, monk?" After pointing at Wu Qi with a trembling finger for a while, Buddha Futu cried out in a hoarse voice, "Poor me! How did I meet such a cunning and shameless boy like you? Those Taoist League's oxnoses say that we, the Buddhist League, are cunning and wise, and that the heads of the human race are as hard and smelly as stones in a latrine pit. How could you be so cunning? Are you really a human? You're not the incarnation of a monster, are you?" He cocked his head and listened for a while, then said to Buddha Futu with a smile, "Monk, you better hurry up. Just now, that planet and its satellite were accidentally destroyed by this marquis. Well, the world of mortals seems to be a place where a slight change in one part will affect the whole body, right? The destruction of 2 celestial bodies, I wonder how much trouble it will cause?" Amitabha had enlightened Buddha Futu, allowing his Yuan Ling to transform into a human and possess the overall prowess of a Buddha. However, the Buddha body that Yuan Ling had transformed into was extremely fragile. Last time, Wu Qi had chopped half of it with his sword. As a result, Wu Qi's strength had skyrocketed. He had to refine this pagoda into a fleshly body and then fuse the body of Yuan Ling with it. Only then would he have the true and complete form of Buddha Futu. After pondering for a long time, Buddha Futu pointed a finger at the Kunwu sword spinning in midair and said with a wry smile, "I'm really out of luck. Well, you do have the strength to suppress me forever. As long as you can suppress me in a place where I can't see the sun and cut off the connection between me and the Lord Buddha, I'll never see the sun again. Hee, are you willing to part with these 108 Kunwu swords?" Buddha Futu was very straightforward. He only cared about his true form, the pagoda, and did not care about the other worldly possessions. After all, he was Amitabha's absolute confidant, and he had countless treasures of the Buddhist League. No matter who he was missing, he could not be missing. As long as he could return to Amitabha's Buddhist realm safely, it would be a piece of cake for him to get a good set of Buddhist treasures. With its formidable defense, the fiend-slaying formation could do nothing to Buddha Futu, but the same could not be said for Buddha Futu. Unless Wu Qi could reach the level of Amitabha, he could not break through Buddha Futu's true form and kill him even with the sword formation. Buddha Futu was stunned for a long time. His face turned purple with anger, and he almost coughed up blood. With a faint smile on his face, Wu Qi appeared next to the flying ship where Liu Bang and others were hiding. Sitting cross-legged on the pagoda with his eyes narrowed, Buddha Futu murmured to himself, "The others? Well, who else is still alive?" Buddha Futu's face, who had been calm all this time, suddenly turned dark. He leaped to his feet, pointed a finger at Wu Qi and cursed, Fuck your 18 generations of ancestors. I'll fuck them all to my heart's content, whether they are men or women. Bastard. It's one thing for you to destroy a few mountains up there, but how could you destroy their home planet? After carefully examining Buddha Fuda's body and finding that there was nothing left on him, Wu Qi sighed and waved his hand. As the starlight faded away, he said, "Give me a moment. I'll send you away after I've dealt with the others." Apart from a cloth wrapping around his crotch, Wu Qi did not leave anything for Buddha Fuda. Wu Qi immediately interrupted him and said grimly, "Bald donkey, since you dared to swear that you will kill me, I'll kill you today even if I have to risk everything. Swear now that you'll never attack me again, or I'll put you down today. Swear by your natal name, Yuan Ling, swear by the name of your master, Amitabha, that if you see me again in the future, you'll run 1,000,000,000 miles away from me and never attack me again." Buddha Fuda chuckled, then shook his head and said, "That's right. Who else can be poor like us Buddhists?" After obtaining the scripture Amitabha cultivated, Wu Qi could naturally see what Buddha Fuda's biggest problem was. It was not only the kasaya and monk robe, but also the belt woven with dragon tendons around his waist, the monk boots made of jade-stemmed Bodhi leaves, and the monk's trousers that came with the robe. The prayer beads in his hand were also stripped clean by Wu Qi. The largest bead on the beads was a storage magical artifact, which contained all of Buddha Fuda's personal treasures. Wu Qi sighed. This was where Buddha Fuda's problem lay. His defense was too strong. With Wu Qi's current cultivation base, he still had a chance to devour Yuan Ling with a sneak attack from behind, but it was impossible to destroy him in a head-on confrontation. Wu Qi smiled and ignored Buddha Fuda's scolding. Stepping on a clump of silver light and flying a few circles around the pagoda, Wu Qi's body elongated as numerous translucent purple-gold dragon scales emerged and wrapped him completely. 2 9-pronged dragon horns, each nearly 10 feet long, grew out of his forehead, emanating beams of auspicious light that condensed into a dazzling cloak behind Wu Qi's back. Meanwhile, the sky-veiling flag of chaos had transformed into a large dark cloud that enveloped the flying ship, resisting the attack of the 12 Kunwa swords. As the Buddhist artifact that Amitabha had carried with him for so many years, Buddha Fuda was a purely defensive artifact that occasionally served as a suppressor to suppress some powerful living beings. When it came to offensive techniques, Buddha Fuda was not very good at them. He was now worrying about how to transform his true form into a human so that he could fuse Yuan Ling with his fleshly body. How could he have the time to study the divine abilities of the Buddhist League with great destructive power? Frowning, Wu Qi stared at Buddha Fuda for about 10 minutes, then nodded slowly and said, "It's true that I can't kill you now, but I have enough confidence to suppress you. However, I have enough confidence to suppress you. I can completely suppress you and make you disappear for billions of years, even if I give up on the 108 Kunwa swords. You can't absorb any natural energy or obtain any power of faith, so you can't refine your true form and become a real Buddha." When he saw Wu Qi step into the formation, Buddha Fuda bellowed furiously, "How dare you take advantage of the Buddhist League, you despicable man! That planet is promised to King Yang Qiu for breaking through the Hongmeng Panga heaven. How dare you take all the benefits from it?" But compared to his formidable defense, Buddha Fuda's offensive power was so weak that it was pathetic. With a clap of his hand, the golden lotus throne hovering over his head flew in front of Wu Qi and said in a deep voice, "Apart from me, only the 8 supreme Buddhas of the Buddhist League have one of the Dharma lotuses of traversing calamity transformed from the first batch of 9 lotus seeds on Lord Buddha's 8 treasures lotus throne." Buddha Fuda uttered a Buddhist mantra as a great golden light burst out of him, illuminating tens of thousands of miles in an instant. The golden pagoda stood between the heaven and the earth, motionless. When Wu Qi's fist was still several tens of feet away from the pagoda, the force of his fist was gradually melted by the beams of golden light. At last, his fist brushed past the pagoda like a gentle breeze. Likewise, the silver light beam transformed from Kunwu swords failed to touch the pagoda. The void in the surroundings vibrated, and the swords pierced through the void diagonally, missing the target as well. Frowning, Buddha Fuda sat cross-legged on top of the gourd at the top of the pagoda. A golden lotus throne hung down from the top of his head, emitting a purple-golden light that shielded him. Coupled with the protection of the pagoda, he was tightly protected in the center. No matter how the formation outside changed, he did not even flinch, as if he was not worried about his own safety. But from time to time he would clap his hands and shoot out a few beams of golden light, exploding and stirring up large ripples in the silver light. Initially, Wu Qi wanted to take away the crotch-wrapping cloth made of rare materials, but on second thought, Wu Qi did not have the courage to swallow it. That was why Wu Qi did not let Buddha Futu return to the Buddhist realm naked. With the power of this pagoda, if Buddha Futu could refine his true form into a human body, his golden body would definitely be stronger than all the present Buddhas of the Buddhist League, and might even surpass his master, Amitabha, and become the #1 indestructible golden body in the Buddhist League. With such a wonderful future waiting for Buddha Futu, Wu Qi did not believe that he could tolerate being suppressed for countless years. Buddha Futu stared coldly at Wu Qi and said with a sneer, "Boy, there's no way you can break through my defense. If I were so easy to kill, wouldn't Lord Buddha have been killed countless times already? You can't do it. If it's someone with the cultivation base of a peak-level first-tier primordial immortal, or the first master of the secret palace, they might be able to refine me." Wu Qi did not even dare to pretend to be Amitabha to deceive Buddha Futu into removing his defense. Unlike those 3 unlucky Buddhas, Buddha Futu had followed Amitabha for countless tribulations, so he naturally had a thorough understanding of Amitabha's aura. Wu Qi might be able to deceive others, but how could he possibly deceive Buddha Futu, who was almost Amitabha's right-hand man? Instead, it would expose the fact that Wu Qi was proficient in the great light indestructible Amitabha treasure scripture, and that would force Amitabha to hunt Wu Qi all over the world. With a faint smile on his face, Wu Qi revealed his true appearance and appeared in front of Buddha Futu. Chapter 805. The sky-veiling flag of chaos was the natal immortal artifact of the North Celestial Emperor, one of the 5 celestial emperors of heaven and earth. It was a unique treasure produced in the primordial world, capable of breaking through the void and stabilizing the earth, water, fire, and wind. Ordinary elemental magic attacks had no effect on it, and it could weaken more than 90% of the attacks of evil spells, curses, and other divine abilities. Liu Bang had only borrowed the sky-veiling flag of chaos from the North Celestial Emperor, which meant he could only exert 1/10,000th of the primordial world's power. However, this 1/10,000th of defense was enough to prevent the 12 Kunwu swords from getting close to him. One reason was that Wu Qi did not personally preside over the sword formation, and the other was that the sky-veiling flag of chaos was too powerful. After all, the Kunwu swords forged by the Yellow Emperor Xinyuan were acquired divine weapons, so they could not be compared with the sky-veiling flag of chaos. Appearing outside the flying ship with his true appearance, Wu Qi faced Liu Bang through the thick dark cloud. Gnashing his teeth, Liu Bang glared at Wu Qi and said, "Marquis of East Sea Province, you've ruined my plan again." Wu Qi nodded and said to Liu Bang with a smile, "Yes, I'll return to Liangzhu later and tell King Baishan that you killed King Tangqiu, Ji Tao." Liu Bang trembled with anger. He pointed a finger at Wu Qi and growled, "Shameless." Wu Qi smiled and pouted his lips, revealing a pair of white teeth that shone with a dazzling gleam. "Look, I have teeth." With a strange laugh, Wu Qi said, "If King of Han falls into my hands, I guarantee you won't have a single tooth left." The furious Liu Bang snorted and suddenly calmed down. Narrowing his eyes and stroking his long beard, he seemed to be thinking about something. Instead, Fan Kuai, who was standing behind Liu Bang, suddenly leaped forward with a loud roar and threw the spear in his hand at Wu Qi's chest with a whistling sound. The spear was 18 feet long and pitch black, forged with 99 kinds of divine iron alloys. It was clean and unadorned, and weighed 36,000 kilograms. Coupled with thousands of restrictive runes, once activated, it felt like hundreds of mountains were pressing down on Wu Qi's head, causing its weight to soar tens of thousands of times. Fan Kuai threw the spear with all his strength, and all the restrictive spells on the spear were activated at the same time. A pitch-black aura throbbed like a flame, wrapped around the spear, and countless restrictive runes could be seen spinning in it. The void around Wu Qi, who was facing the spear, suddenly sank, and the gravity around him increased by more than 10,000 times. At this moment, Fan Kuai's real cultivation base was exposed to Wu Qi. As a pure-body cultivator, he only had the immortal energy of a 36-tier heaven immortal, which was enough for him to fly on a cloud. His enormous energy essence was swirling like a dragon in his body, and his terrible fleshly strength was equivalent to that of a peak-level gold immortal. With a wave of his hand or a stamp of his foot, he could unleash the full force of a peak-level gold immortal with the help of his natal gold immortal artifact. Not bad. Thick purple-gold dragon scales emerged on Wu Qi's right palm as he grabbed the spear as easily as grabbing a blade of grass. As a body cultivator, Wu Qi's fleshly body had also broken through the realm of primordial. According to the difference in strength between a 9th-tier primordial immortal and a peak-level gold immortal, Wu Qi's fleshly strength was 100,000 times stronger than Fan Kuai's. His every move was accompanied by the power of the heavenly Tao, so Fan Kuai's attack was nothing to him. With a swipe of his palm on the spear, Wu Qi had removed all 3,600 restrictive runes in it. Then he nodded at the dumbfounded Fan Kuai and said with a smile, "The material of this spear is good, but the restrictive arrays in it are rubbish." 3,600 restrictive runes? Why do you need so many? Come, let me show you what the spear I've modified looks like. A bright light gathered at the tip of his finger as Wu Qi casually threw a rune recorded in the ancient god scroll that represented the essence of gravity into the spear. The rune, about 10 feet in circumference and shaped like a small hill, exuding a mighty pressure, slowly sank into the spear. In the blink of an eye, the 18-feet-long spear shrank inwardly to only 9 feet long. A terrifying gravitational force gushed out from the inside of the spear, forcefully compressing the spear by more than half. The impact of a single rune was far greater than the 3,600 layers of restrictive spells on the spear. Wu Qi weighed the spear in his hand, which had become much heavier, and then casually threw it over to Fan Kuai. Standing on the prow of the ship, Liu Bang raised his brows and uttered a spell. The dark cloud transformed from the sky-veiling flag of chaos, wrapped up the spear and slowly pulled it to the ship. Staring fixedly at Wu Qi, Fan Kuai gritted his teeth and said, "It's just a rune. Do you think a rune can be compared to the 3,600 runes carefully arranged by Xian Xingzi, the #1 immortal craftsman of the Celestial Court?" Sneering, he grabbed the spear that Wu Qi had just reforged. Fan Kuai's dark, hairy face suddenly turned pale, and as soon as he held the spear, his arm was suddenly stretched by more than a foot. A series of cracking sounds rang out as all the muscles on his right arm, from his shoulder to his wrist, were broken, and blood sprayed out from dozens of wounds. The severe pain made him howl miserably, and he loosened his grip, letting the spear fall and smash heavily on the deck of the flying ship. The deck of the flying ship that was covered in defensive spells erupted with a dazzling blue light. Then, with a screeching sound that made one's teeth ache, the blue light shattered and the 3-foot-thick deck was easily crushed by the spear. The spear pierced through the entire flying ship and drilled out from the bottom. Then, it was wrapped up in the black cloud that the primordial sky-covering flag released, firmly imprisoning it in midair. The runes he had casually injected into the spear, which represented the essence of gravity, made the spear, which weighed 36,000 kilograms, weigh as much as hundreds of stars. With the physical strength of a peak-level gold immortal, Fan Kuai could play with the moon and the stars, but at most, he could only play with the power of 2 or 3 stars. The tremendous force of hundreds of stars came crashing down, but his arm was only broken into dozens of pieces instead of completely breaking. That was because he had reacted quickly and let go early. This was the gap between a primordial immortal and a peak-level gold immortal. Or, this was the difference between an almighty expert with the cultivation base of Tao realm and an ant. In ancient times, only those who had entered the Tao realm had the power to control their own destiny, and those below the Tao realm could be ignored. The faces of Liu Bang and the others fell instantly. Suddenly, Zhang Liang pulled out a dazzling golden pen and wrote 360 characters of thunder, shrouded in purple mist in the void. The ancient characters of birds and insects twisted and wheeled in the void, and soon, all 360 of them merged into one, transforming into a huge ball of purple thunderbolt that came smashing toward Wu Qi at an incredible speed. Before the lightning contained in the ball of lightning, which was powerful enough to completely scorch the surface of a planet, could be released, Wu Qi grabbed it, shoved it into his mouth and swallowed it with a smile. As he had just made a breakthrough, Wu Qi was still a little hungry. The lightning contained in the ball of lightning was extremely powerful, which made it a perfect snack to fill his stomach. It was hard to tell that Zhang Liang, who usually kept a low profile, had the cultivation base of a peak-level gold immortal. They must have some strange immortal treasures with them, as even Wu Qi could not see through their real cultivation base. Of course, this was also because the sky-veiling flag of chaos had blocked his sight. With Wu Qi's current cultivation base, without the flag, he could easily see through the real strength of Liu Bang and the others. Face pale, Zhang Liang stared at Wu Qi for a long time, then finally shook his head and said, "You're already a primordial immortal. I'm no match for you." Han Xen gave a cold snort. The 3 stars in his eyes shone with a dazzling light as he casually threw out 3 blood-colored energy beams at Wu Qi. The murderous aura of the 3 stars, Greed, 7 Killing, and Vanquisher, shot out whistling toward Wu Qi's neck, chest, and lower abdomen. The surrounding void had been sealed by the Fiend Slaying Sword formation, so Han Xen could not mobilize the star power in the outside world. The 3 blood-colored energy beams he threw out at the moment were the natal star power he had stored in his body and fused with his blood essence. They were extremely powerful and refined, dozens of times stronger than the attacks he usually launched with external forces. But as soon as Wu Qi opened his mouth, he still swallowed them. After practicing the myriad harmonization grand magic, everything in the world could be devoured by Wu Qi, and Han Xen's attack, which contained his blood essence, was a supreme delicacy. As Han Xen was only a peak-level gold immortal, Wu Qi easily digested the 3 blood-colored energy beams. Burping slightly, Wu Qi turned to Han Xen and said with a smile, "Han Xen? I fought you once last time, but I was still no match for you. This time, if you have the guts to come out, I'll kill you. What do you say?" Han Xen's face flickered slightly. He glanced at Liu Bang, gnashed his teeth, and was about to rush out of the protective circle of the sky-veiling flag of chaos. Grabbing Han Xen's shoulder, Liu Bang smiled at Wu Qi and said, "Marquis, you are already a primordial immortal. Why do you have to make things difficult for us juniors?" "Well, my father is the great demon-slaying celestial emperor of the celestial court in the South Pole, and he is the crimson emperor of the 5 celestial emperors of the 5 directions. My father is already a peak-level second-tier primordial immortal. If you dare to do anything to me, I'm afraid." Liu Bang squinted his eyes and laughed so hard that his saliva flew all over the place. Looking at Liu Bang, Wu Qi pondered for a moment, then nodded and said with a smile, "I won't kill you." Liu Bang gave him a thumbs up and said seriously, "That's a wise move. Marquis, please show me mercy today, and I'll definitely repay you in the future." Staring at Liu Bang, Wu Qi sneered and said, "I won't kill you, but you'll have to take out all your valuables." "Well, as the son of the Crimson Emperor, I don't believe that you don't have any valuables with you." "Well, you can leave one of your natal immortal artifacts. After all, it's better to leave a way out in the future. Apart from that, you can't leave even a copper coin behind." Liu Bang burst out laughing, nodded, and said, "You're right. Worldly possessions are just fleeting clouds. How can they be more important than your own life?" As he laughed, Liu Bang took off a glowing storage ring shaped like a golden dragon and threw it to Wu Qi. Then he waved his hand generously and said, "All my savings are in it. Mark you can." Before he could finish, Liu Bang was stunned by Wu Qi's action. Wu Qi grabbed the ring, then pointed his finger at an inconspicuous jade-colored thread tied to Liu Bang's right wrist, on which hung a string of 13 small jade slips that looked like protective talismans. Lu Bang opened his mouth but did not say a word. As if his father had died, he took off the string of jade slips and threw them to Wu Qi painfully. Each of these small jade slips sealed a small dimensional void, and these jade slips were the only coordinate portals that led to those dimensional voids. All of Lu Bang's personal treasures were in them. Wu Qi looked at Lu Bang and his companions with a smile and said, "Don't play any tricks. Just take out all your money." "Well, that's right, Your Excellency Shao. He is very wise. The pearl on your neck seems to be a storage magic treasure, isn't it? Don't be secretive and take it out quickly. TSK, Your Excellency Han Xin is so straightforward." "Well, no, I don't want the undergarment. It's too wicked to take it away." After a round of looting, Lu Bang and his companions looked at Wu Qi with tears in their eyes. Lu Bang said angrily, "Can I go now?" Wu Qi nodded with a smile and said, "As long as you tell me your background, you can go." Lu Bang froze for a moment. Chapter 806. Wu Qi did not ask Lu Bang to tell him what the Celestial Court's plan was. No matter what the Celestial Court was going to do, the fact that the Buddhist League had joined hands with the Celestial Court, and that someone had even begun to block the entrance of Empress Was Palace, proved that things were beyond redemption. The Wahuang clan, one of the creators of the human race, who now controlled the myriad spirit cauldron, the source of the souls of billions of living beings under the heaven and earth, who had stepped into the realm of Tao fusing with the boundless virtues during the time of the mysterious figure, was now being blocked by someone. The water was deep and muddy. Wu Qi was not interested in such a muddy water now. Whether Diyu collapsed, and whether Pangu continent was in the hands of the Celestial Court and the Buddhist League, it had nothing to do with Wu Qi. The more muddy the water, the easier it was to fish. When Diyu was strong, Wu Qi would be the Marquis of Diyu. When Diyu declined, the Celestial Court would be in control of everything, and Wu Qi would be the sect leader of the underhand sect. As a primordial immortal, he could still attain a high position in the Celestial Court. At most, he would just change his face. What was so troublesome about that? Therefore, Wu Qi did not care about the Celestial Court's plan. He was just curious about Lu Bang's background. After all, Lu Bang was a figure in the history that Wu Qi was familiar with. Everything about him was so interesting. Lu Bang's face was unsightly, but in the face of Wu Qi's violent threat, he could only gnash his teeth and tell him his background. To be precise, Lu Bang was the son of Crimson Emperor, the great celestial emperor of the South Pole of the Celestial Court, who commanded all living beings to patrol the universe. Crimson Emperor, the great celestial emperor of the South Pole of the Celestial Court, held all the departments of the Celestial Court, and was in charge of wiping out all the forces that disrespected the Celestial Court. In other words, the Celestial Court often followed the principle of those who submit will prosper, and those who oppose will perish, and Crimson Emperor was the executor of this policy. As Crimson Emperor's son, Lu Bang was born 3 eons ago. He was smart and capable, and was born with the overall strength of a peak-level heaven immortal, and soon stepped into the realm of gold immortal. Unfortunately, his mother's clan did not have a high status, and was just an ordinary concubine. Emperor's concubine. So, the Lu Bang was become more capable and talented, and the Lu Bang was become more powerful. In the end, Lu Bang made a mistake under the scheme of his brothers and was severely punished by the Scarlet Emperor. He had to undertake the most arduous and unrewarding task, reincarnation, eradicating all forces that could pose a threat to the mortal world. Just as Crown Prince Chongqing and the others had arranged, they had disturbed the warring states on Earth and helped the Emperor of Qin, Yingzheng. The Celestial Court immediately sent immortals to shake the foundation of Qin. Then, Lu Bang was reincarnated into the mortal world, rose to power, and killed Xiangyu, the hegemon king of Western Chu, and the others who were supported by King Yangshan's clan after the Qin dynasty was plunged into chaos. After that, Lu Bang established the Great Han Dynasty and gathered the human sovereign qi of the mortal world. This human sovereign qi was then collected by the Scarlet Emperor using an immortal weapon to refine his own immortal weapon. According to the punishment Lu Bang had received, he would probably have to reincarnate tens of thousands of times, spend tens of thousands of lifetimes in the mortal world, build tens of thousands of dynasties, and gather such an enormous amount of human sovereign qi before Crimson Emperor could cancel his punishment. However, after Liu Bang returned to the Celestial Court after his last reincarnation, he quickly established a relationship with the Crown Prince of the Great Celestial Emperor of the Celestial Court. The Crown Prince intervened and persuaded Crimson Emperor to cancel his punishment, and asked him to serve as the special envoy of the Celestial Court stationed in Diyu, secretly carrying out some collusion missions. That was how Wu Qi met Liu Bang on Pangu continent. If Liu Bang had not been so quick to curry favor this time, he would have been reincarnated again hundreds of years ago, and no one knew where he was now, leading a peasant rebellion and being beaten up by others. With a wry smile on his face, Liu Bang looked at Wu Qi and said coolly, "You see, that's who I am. I'm a poor man who is not loved by my father, so I can only struggle on my own. If I hadn't befriended the Crown Prince this time, I'm afraid I would never have a chance to make a name for myself." Wu Qi looked at Liu Bang. A poor man who struggled on his own? How could someone who befriended the Crown Prince of the Celestial Court and borrowed the sky-veiling flag of chaos from the North Celestial Emperor be a poor man? If that were the case, those immortals who had no backing should have cut their own throats a long time ago. With a cold snort, Wu Qi waved his hand, and the 108 Kunwu swords flew back into his body, shrouded in a vast starlight. As soon as the formation was retracted, the void suddenly darkened, and the countless stars within tens of thousands of miles around the formation disappeared. In the dark sky, there were only a few stars the size of beans shining brightly. In the void 100 miles away, Buddha Futu stomped his feet and roared in exasperation, "You bastard! Did you really shatter this mortal world? Heavens, the laws of the heavenly Tao here are crumbling. You damned thing!" Having no time to settle the score with Wu Qi, Buddha Futu cried out the name of Buddha, transformed into a beam of golden light, and sped away together with the pagoda. Sitting cross-legged in the sky where the star used to be, Buddha Futu unleashed a torrent of Buddhist energy that transformed into a huge star hovering in midair. Buddha Futu had condensed a vast planet with his own Buddhist power, temporarily replacing the position of the planet devoured by Wu Qi among the countless mortal worlds, and temporarily stopping the chain reaction in the mortal worlds caused by the destruction of the planet. Wu Qi grinned and waved at the dumbfounded Liu Bang. Then, the dark Yin celestial tower flew out from the top of his head. The void exploded with a boom, and Wu Qi sped away with Ao Buzan and the others. Liu Bang's face flickered as he stared at Buddha Futu in a daze. He gave the direction in which Wu Qi had disappeared with a venomous look, then pointed a finger at the sky and recited a few incantations under his breath. All of a sudden, a speck of golden light flashed across the boundless void. Accompanied by a dull rumble of thunder, hundreds of huge golden four-wheeled chariots sped through the void, pulled by golden flood dragons. There were dozens of heavenly generals in golden heavy armor on each four-wheeled chariot. The heavenly general leading the chariot was surrounded by purple flames, and he emitted a tremendous aura that almost shattered this mortal world into pieces. His aura was especially astonishing. Buddha Futu's furious cry came from afar, "Get lost! Are you trying to destroy this mortal world? Get lost now. I'll capture you alive and send you to that bitch, Bodhisattva Great Joy, so that she can suck out your bone marrow." Flustered and exasperated, Buddha Futu could not stop himself from uttering all kinds of dirty words. Liu Bang cupped his fist and bowed to Buddha Futu, then pulled out a golden medallion from his waist and waved it at the group of heavenly generals. "Hunt down Tan Lang, the Marquis of Diu East Sea Province. Capture him alive if you can, but if you can't, kill him and bring back everything he has." The heavenly general, whose body was shrouded in purple flames, answered in a deep voice. Then he gave a loud cry, and the hundreds of golden chariots gave a deafening rumble of thunder as they pierced through the void and fled into the boundless void. The heavenly general let out a long, deep roar, and the sound waves spread across the void in a unique and mysterious way. All the checkpoints the Celestial Court had set up in the alternate dimensions received his roar at the same time. Above Wu Qi, who was flying through the void with the dark celestial tower hovering over his head, a cloud of smoke suddenly flashed across a checkpoint of the celestial court. Tens of thousands of heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals in full armor roared as they charged toward Wu Qi. Among these heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals, the one with the highest cultivation base was a third-tier gold immortal, riding on a white tiger and holding 2 swords in his hands. Without wasting time talking to Wu Qi, he unleashed 2 beams of purple and green dragon-shaped sword energy that were 1,000 feet long and thrust toward Wu Qi. At the same time, he opened his mouth and shot out a beam of yellow light that carried an uneven object that looked like a bezoar toward Wu Qi. Third-tier gold immortal? Wu Qi smiled faintly. He did not want to waste time with these heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals with low cultivation bases. He threw out a casual punch and shattered the 2 dragon-shaped sword energy, while dozens of cracks appeared on the 2 swords in the heavenly general's hands. The heavenly general cried out in pain. Amidst the yellow mist, the thing that looked like a bezoar smashed down towards Wu Qi with a refreshing fragrance. The fragrance was intoxicating, and the bezoar itself was heavier than the stars. If someone with a weaker cultivation base were to be smashed by it, his head would definitely be broken and bleeding. Looking at the fragrant object, Wu Qi could not help but laugh. "General, are you an ox spirit who has become an immortal? Is this the natal immortal treasure cultivated from the bezoar in your body? Don't tell me you don't have any other treasures with you?" Amidst his laughter, Wu Qi snatched the bezoar, which weighed millions of kilograms, and shoved it into his storage ring. The bezoar produced from the body of a third-tier gold immortal ox spirit was a rare and good medicinal ingredient, which could be used in dozens of supreme-grade gold immortal pills. It was an excellent raw material. The heavenly general was so anxious that he almost cried. As Wu Qi had said, he had nothing but the 2 immortal swords. If he were a wealthy demon immortal, how could he be sent by the celestial court to guard the void passage in this remote dimension? The bezoar was indeed his natal immortal treasure. It was refined from a ball of bezoar that he had condensed in his body since he was a child, and was basically half of his life. After being forcefully taken away by Wu Qi, the heavenly general's eyes turned red. He threw away the broken immortal sword in his hand and suddenly transformed into his original form. A giant black bull that was over 1,000 feet tall roared and charged at Wu Qi. Wu Qi snorted coldly. With a flash, he dodged the desperate black bull spirit and punched him in the ear. A supreme divine power exploded out and blew half of the bull spirit's body into pieces. Wu Qi shouted, "As a demon immortal, you didn't go to the demon realm. Instead, you joined the celestial court and worked for the celestial court. That's fine, you're just looking for a meal. But you shouldn't have blocked my way." Aobuzan habitually came out of Wu Qi's sleeve with half of his body, opened his mouth and swallowed the golden immortal bull spirit. Just as he was about to praise the wonderful taste of the beef, a golden light flashed behind him. A purple spear shot over with raging flames and pierced through Aobuzan's neck. Aobuzan let out a miserable howl. His body twisted violently, golden dragon blood sprayed out, and a large amount of blood even sprinkled on Wu Qi's body. The hot blood made Wu Qi absent-minded for a moment. The spear almost hit the vital point under Aobuzan's reverse scale. Fortunately, Aobuzan was also a cunning fellow. With a flash of light in the corner of his eyes, he instinctively straightened his body and avoided the vital point. Even so, the flame attached to the spear almost burned his internal organs, and the golden dragon blood spilled out like cheap tap water. Wu Qi's face darkened. He stopped abruptly and pressed his palm on Aobuzan's body. One by one, more than a dozen primordial divine runes, which contained the power of life and recovery, were injected into Aobuzan's body by Wu Qi. Boundless life force rolled over from the void and quickly sank into Aobuzan's body, stimulating his wounds to heal quickly. With a flash of golden light, an immortal general clad in a Taoyu's heart-covering golden armor and shrouded in purple flames appeared proudly in front of Wu Qi. "I'm true Lord Gui, the demon-slaying general who works for Crimson Emperor. Why don't you capture me now? What are you waiting for?" Wu Qi gave true Lord Gui a look. A fleshly cultivator, a ninth-tier primordial immortal. A demon-slaying general who works for Crimson Emperor must be the top fighting force of the Celestial Court, right? Without saying a word, Wu Qi curled up his body and charged toward True Lord Gu Yi, his fists covered in dragon scales raining down on the old man's face. Chapter 807. True Lord Gu Yi, the Crimson Emperor of the Celestial Court, was one of the 9 personal disciples of the great Celestial Emperor who commanded all spirits in the South Pole to patrol the universe. He was a primordial immortal renowned for his speed among the famous great celestial generals of the Celestial Court. Because he was the personal disciple of the Crimson Emperor, although he had stepped into the realm of primordial, he was still a subject of the Celestial Court, and was willing to serve in the Celestial Court, unlike other primordial immortals who lived in seclusion in the 9 heavens or occupied territories in outer heavenly realms. As the Crimson Emperor's great celestial emperor's demon-slaying general, True Lord Gu Yi's daily task was to patrol the universe with his men and wander around at will. If he found a target that the Celestial Court needed to deal with, he had the power to kill him at will. When an important member of the Celestial Court summoned him with a secret spell, he had to respond quickly and lead his men to the rescue. True Lord Gu Yi was famous for his speed, and he even had the Rhino Cloak, an immortal artifact he was proud of. It was made from the feathers of more than 900 kinds of divine and immortal birds famous for their speed, and could increase his speed by more than 100 times. True Lord Gu Yi's flying speed was already much faster than Wu Qi's. With the help of the Rhino Cloak, it only took him a very short time to leave his men behind and catch up with Wu Qi. Then he pierced Ao Buzan's neck with his spear and seriously wounded him. In the face of Wu Qi's incoming fist, True Lord Gu Yi sneered disdainfully. Roaring in a low voice, a cloak that was 1,000 feet long fluttered behind him as he spun gracefully around Wu Qi like a ghost. Wu Qi's fists could not touch him at all. Instead, it was his natal primordial immortal artifact, the Spear of Flowing Light, that kept stabbing at Wu Qi's body, leaving streaks of purple light behind it. The Rhino Cloak could instantly increase True Lord Gu Yi's speed by more than 100 times. As for the Immortal Spear of Light, it was a natal primordial immortal artifact that the Celestial Court spent a great deal of resources to forge for him. It was said that with a thrust of the spear, it could catch up with the passing of time. In the blink of an eye, not only did Wu Qi fail to hit True Lord Gu Yi, but True Lord Gu Yi had stabbed him 198 times in a row. Wherever the spear's shadow passed, countless sparks splashed around Wu Qi's body, and loud clanging sounds lingered in his ears. Fortunately, he had already activated the evil dragon kill. His entire body was covered with 3 layers of purple gold dragon scales. The dragon scales with extremely high defensive power easily blocked the attack of the flowing light immortal spear. Not even a scratch was left on it. In the blink of an eye, Wu Qi suddenly retreated, while True Lord Gu Yi put away his spear in surprise and took a few steps back. The Rhino Cloak had a limit to the speed boost it gave True Lord Gu Yi, and the brief exchange had consumed 30% of his immortal energy. So, he had to retreat and regulate his aura. Otherwise, if he ran out of immortal energy, even a primordial immortal would be at the mercy of others, which was extremely disadvantageous to him in a battle. In particular, True Lord Gu Yi could not accept that his spear could not pierce through the scales on Wu Qi's body. He had to think about what was going on. Wu Qi took a deep breath and retreated a few miles, staring at True Lord Gu Yi in astonishment. He had thrown more than 3,000 punches at True Lord Gu Yi with all his might, and even if there was a star in front of him, he would have shattered it thousands of times. But the fact that such a fierce attack could not touch True Lord Gu Yi at all had put Wu Qi in a difficult position. They stared at each other for a while, and then Wu Qi gave him a thumbs up and said in a deep voice, "True Lord Gu Yi? That's fast." True Lord Gu Yi nodded slowly, then slowly took off the Taodai heart-concealing armor, leaving only the cloak on his back. He laughed dryly and said, "Dragon transformation script of dragons? I don't think so. Is it the dragon kill of Dayu's secret palace? The dragon scales on your body can resist the piercing of my light. Hee, luckily I wasn't hit by your punch, or I would have been in danger. He pointed at the armor he had taken off and said frankly, I think this immortal armor is no stronger than a piece of paper in front of you. You can pierce through it with just one punch, can't you? It's a hindrance to me, so I might as well fight you with speed. Be careful, my speed can increase by at least 10% after I take it off. Wu Qi took a deep breath, grinned coldly and said, 10% of your speed? Don't let me hit you with my punch. You'll die. The two stared at each other like fighting cocks and exchanged a few words, but neither of them had the intention to fight. Wu Qi's strength was so great that if he could hit True Lord Gu Yi with his punch, he would definitely be severely injured. But True Lord Gu Yi's speed was so fast that Wu Qi couldn't hit him. But because he was too fast, True Lord Gu Yi's spear style was the kind that would leave as soon as he touched it, so he couldn't hurt Wu Qi at all. One couldn't hit, and the other couldn't hurt. After staring at each other for a long time, True Lord Gu Yi suddenly let out a long roar and turned into a purple lightning bolt that shot toward Wu Qi's chest. The flowing light immortal spear was right in front of the lightning bolt, and True Lord Gu Yi activated the Rhino Cloak to deliver the most fatal blow to Wu Qi at the fastest speed. True Lord Gu Yi was full of confidence that he could pierce through Wu Qi's body with all his strength and speed. The flowing light immortal spear let out a crisp and melodious whistle as it turned blurry. The time around True Lord Gu Yi and the spear began to accelerate 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, and finally, the time around them accelerated to about 500 times. When the speed reached the limit, the flowing light immortal spear actually accelerated the flow of time, as if it wanted to catch up with the flow of time in the past. A sense of chaotic space-time disorder made Wu Qi feel dizzy. How could he catch up with the flow of time? But True Lord Gu Yi's attack did give him such a feeling. He and the lightning bolt that came with the flowing light immortal spear had entered the void, caught up with a point in the past, and stabbed into the body of Wu Qi, who was fighting with him just a moment ago. When the spear was about a mile away from Wu Qi, a burst of blood suddenly burst out of Wu Qi's chest, and a 3-inch deep wound appeared on his chest. Wu Qi gave a loud cry. The dark Yin celestial tower over his head sprayed out a large sheet of starlight that surrounded him, and the flow of time around him suddenly skyrocketed by 2,000 times. This was the fastest time that Wu Qi could control after stepping into the realm of primordial. The rapid flow of time formed an invisible space-time barrier around Wu Qi, tearing apart the connection between the outer space and the time anomaly, and turning the void into an absolute domain that was completely under Wu Qi's control. As True Lord Gu Yi rushed into the time domain controlled by Wu Qi, the flowing light immortal spear vibrated violently. The difference in the flow of time by 1,500 times had turned into a terrible time oscillation, putting great pressure on the spear. True Lord Gu Yi looked at Wu Qi in horror and exclaimed, "You can control time? How many times is this?" Wu Qi ignored True Lord Gu Yi's question. In the time domain controlled by Wu Qi, True Lord Gu Yi was like a rabbit caught in a quagmire, no longer able to struggle or jump. The flow of time around Wu Qi was 2,000 times faster, while that around True Lord Gu Yi was only 500 times faster. Therefore, Wu Qi's movements were much faster than True Lord Gu Yi's. In fact, Wu Qi's movements were not as fast as True Lord Gu Yi's, but with the acceleration of time, True Lord Gu Yi could not see each of Wu Qi's movements clearly. He performed an incantation gesture with both hands. Immediately, dozens of vicious curses that could weaken a person's body and make it difficult for him to move flew out from between his fingers, followed by curses that could devour blood essence, souls, flesh and internal organs, bones, and immortal energy that could burn away. A series of vicious curses from the primordial Tao of divinity shot out in the form of plumes of black smoke, attaching themselves to True Lord Gu. Although they were both primordial immortals, Wu Qi's curses had caused great damage to True Lord Gu. His body was rapidly rotting and deforming, and his hand could not hold on to the spear for a tenth of a second. The spear flew out of his hand amidst a dazzling trail of purple flame, but was pulled far away by the time vortex conjured by Wu Qi. Not sure if he could kill true Lord Gu Yi, Wu Qi dared not use many of his trump cards. Instead, he kept attacking true Lord Gu Yi with various spells from Yu's Directorate of Celestials, the power of the primordial Tao of Divinity, and the power of the primordial divine runes. Countless curses and divine runes poured out of true Lord Gu Yi's body. His overall strength was rapidly weakened, and yellow blisters began to appear on his face, from which a copious amount of pus kept gushing out. Feeling excruciating pain all over his body, true Lord Gu Yi bellowed furiously, cultivating both fleshly body and magic? Your cultivation base is already at the level of Supreme Oracle? Otherwise, how could your curses hurt me? The purple flame around true Lord Gu Yi towered into the sky. It was a wisp of pure young heavenly flame that came from beyond the 33 heavens. It possessed great power, and the pure yang thunder tribulation that immortals attracted when breaking through to the next realm was actually condensed from this kind of heavenly flame. As soon as the heavenly flame appeared, the power of Wu Qi's curses was immediately weakened by 30%. Chanting the Tao League's demon-subduing mantra, true Lord Gu Yi's rhino cloak transformed into a beam of green light, wrapped around his body, and brought him flying away. Even with his eyesight, Wu Qi could not see how he disappeared. Almost instinctively, Wu Qi made a grabbing motion. A subtle aura rushed out of his palm, enveloping the rhino cloak with his thievery energy. Then he quietly activated the myriad harmonization grand magic, sending a wisp of pure energy essence into Wu Qi's body. Wu Qi felt his body lighten, and his speed suddenly increased by more than 30 times. Not only did he steal the essence of the rhino spirit cloak, but he also absorbed a part of true Lord Gu Yi's cultivation base. With a loud laugh, Wu Qi's speed suddenly skyrocketed. He turned into a black beam and sped away. With the help of Dark Ein's celestial tower, Wu Qi suddenly caught up with true Lord Gu Yi, shoulder to shoulder. Before true Lord Gu Yi could react, Wu Qi's elbow struck him hard in the ribs. The tremendous force exploded like a bomb. A loud noise rang out from true Lord Gu Yi's fleshly body, and a dozen of his ribs were smashed by Wu Qi's elbow. Compared to the body that Wu Qi had tempered with the true body of heaven and earth scripture, dragon transformation script, and dragon kill, true Lord Gu Yi's body, which focused on speed, was still too weak. They were both primordial immortals, but if Wu Qi's body was a steel ingot, true Lord Gu Yi's was a piece of tofu. The sharp pain made true Lord Gu Yi shriek hoarsely. Glaring angrily at Wu Qi, he swung his palm toward Wu Qi's forehead. True Lord Gu Yi thrust his palm out, causing the surrounding void to collapse with a boom. A pitch-black crack in the void transformed into a sharp blade light and went straight toward Wu Qi's forehead. Wu Qi grabbed true Lord Gu Yi's rhino cloak and kicked him. The tremendous force sent him flying far away, but Wu Qi had the cloak, which kept twitching in his hand. True Lord Gu Yi let out a long cry and gave Wu Qi a venomous glare. Then he summoned his light flow immortal spear and sped away in a flash in a beam of flame. As a body cultivator and an immortal who focused on speed, true Lord Gu Yi was completely dominated by Wu Qi. In the end, he could only flee helplessly after being severely wounded. Then he heard true Lord Gu Yi cry out, "Just you wait, Tan Lang, Marquis of East Sea Province. I won't let you get away with this." Sneering, Wu Qi swallowed the rhino cloak, turned, and left. Before leaving, Wu Qi pressed his palm down and smashed the outpost of the celestial court in front of him, sending tens of thousands of soldiers and generals flying thousands of miles away with their bones broken and tendons torn. Chapter 808. Up in midair, Liu Bang and his company stood foolishly on the flying ship, waiting for news from true Lord Gu. After a long time, Han Exen paced impatiently on the bow of the ship. When Liu Bang saw the restless Han Exen, he smiled confidently and said, "Don't worry, true Lord Gu Yi has stepped into the realm of primordial 10,000 years ago, and he became a primordial expert through his own arduous cultivation. That boy did not achieve it by virtue of virtue. All the immortals in the universe know that a primordial expert who achieved it by virtue of virtue is at least 30% weaker than a true primordial expert. That boy is dead for sure. Han Xian's face darkened and he said nothing, while Zhang Liang and Xiao He did not look happy either. Even if Wu Qi was killed, they would have lost all their faces. How could the proud Han Xian and his company swallow the humiliation of being robbed by Wu Qi? Not being able to give Wu Qi a few slashes with their own hands was one of their biggest regrets. Just as they were struggling, a golden light flashed before their eyes, and true Lord Gu Yi, with half of his body caved in, appeared in front of them angrily. Before Liu Bang could say anything, true Lord Gu Yi roared furiously, "Why didn't King of Han tell me that guy is a freak who cultivates both magic and fleshly body? It's fine if he is just a supreme oracle or a human warrior from Hongmeng Panga Heaven, but if both of them work together, it would be easy to deal with him." Liu Bang and his company were stunned as they looked at true Lord Gu Yi, who was covered in dust and had a large part of his body caved in. True Lord Gu Yi scolded Liu Bang angrily. If Wu Qi were just an ordinary supreme oracle, he was confident that he could pierce Wu Qi's heart with a spear. If Wu Qi were just an ordinary human warrior from Hongmeng Panga Heaven, with his terrifying speed, true Lord Gu Yi could still beat Wu Qi to a pulp. But Wu Qi was a freak who combined both of them. Not only did he possess incredible physical strength, but he could also control the flow of time, which limited true Lord Gu Yi's greatest advantage, his incredible speed. Therefore, true Lord Gu Yi could only suffer defeat in front of Wu Qi. A body cultivator like true Lord Gu Yi, who focused on speed, would have a great advantage if he were to fight a supreme oracle or a human warrior from Hongmeng Panga Heaven. With his insane speed, even if he couldn't defeat the enemy, he would be able to tie them down. As long as the Sky Patrol army that he led arrived, thousands of people would be able to set up the Scarlet Scorching Sky Demon Vanquishing formation that was created by the Scarlet the Arch, and they would be able to kill the enemy. But a man like Wu Qi, who cultivated both fleshly body and magic, and possessed a supreme-grade supreme tower that could control time, was his absolute nemesis. Suppressing his speed by controlling the flow of time, and then dealing a fatal blow to true Lord Gu Yi with his absolute advantage in strength, was definitely the enemy that true Lord Gu Yi feared the most. But there were a few freaks who cultivated both fleshly body and magic in Yu Dynasty. They were now the top figures of Yu's Directorate of Celestials and the Secret Palace, and revered elders of the Secret Palace. They did not leave Liangzhu easily, and true Lord Gu Yi never dreamed that he would run into one of them. Seeing true Lord Gu Yi beaten to such a state, Liu Bang was so scared that his claws went numb. Unlike Liu Bang, an unfavored son, true Lord Gu Yi was one of Crimson Emperor's 9 most capable personal disciples, and one of the 9 famous evil-slaying generals of the Celestial Court. Unlike Liu Bang, who was an immortal king with a title but no real power, true Lord Gu Yi's army of Celestial Court consisted of 3 celestial patrolling armies, each of which had 9 armies and 18 battalions of celestial soldiers and celestial generals, with a total of 1 billion soldiers. Because Liu Bang had provided the wrong information, true Lord Gu Yi was seriously wounded. At the thought that Crimson Emperor might be angry because of this, Liu Bang had an impulse to pass out. A fierce gleam flashed in Liu Bang's eyes, and he even had the thought of killing true Lord Gu Yi. If not for the fact that true Lord Gu Yi was not someone he could deal with, he would have killed him by now. Staring blankly at the seriously wounded true Lord Gu Yi, Liu Bang suddenly cried out in a hoarse voice, Senior brother Gu Yi, please listen to me." Sobbing bitterly, Liu Bang threw his arms around true Lord Gu Yi and burst into tears. "Senior brother, please listen to me. You can't blame me for this." Sob. The 3 primordial immortals sent by the Celestial Court to the mortal world, the 3 Buddhas sent by the Buddhist League, and a fiend immortal sent by the great fiend emperor of the fiend realm. They were all killed by that boy. But I really didn't know he had such a strong strength before this. True Lord Gu Yi shuddered. He wished he could stab Liu Bang to death with his Lightstream immortal spear, even though Liu Bang was his master's son. Wu Qi killed 7 primordial immortals alone? Why didn't you tell me earlier? What a bastard! Are you afraid you won't die soon enough? True Lord Gu Yi wanted to cry but had no tears as he stroked his injured ribs. An ordinary primordial immortal would not be able to recover from such an injury without spending a few periods of hard cultivation. True Lord Gu Yi had a good master who could eat all kinds of supreme-grade primordial immortal pills like sweets. It would only take him a few months to fully recover. But he had the Rhino Cloak, the cloak that could increase his speed by 100 times in a short period of time. It was extremely difficult to gather the feathers of hundreds of divine and immortal birds that were famous for their speed, and some of them even came from the mount of a Taoist patriarch, Crimson Emperor's master, who was also one of the backers of the celestial court. It took Crimson Emperor a great favor to pluck 3 of the longest tail feathers from that mount, whose cultivation base was not much weaker than Crimson Emperor's. Yet, Wu Qi had snatched away such an important treasure. It pained true Lord Gu Yi so much that he wanted to add hundreds of holes to Lu Bang's body. Golden ripples rolled down from the sky, including heavenly flowers, golden lotuses, golden lamps, golden bells, and many other unusual phenomena. A gentle and mysterious aura enveloped the mortal world. The real almighty experts of Taoist League and Buddhist League had arrived. Nothing could go wrong in the mortal world. On average, there was a chance to safely break through to the realm of primordial every half an eon, so this was a place where nothing could go wrong. True Lord Gu Yi, Lu Bang, and the others dropped to their knees at the same time, bowing deeply and not daring to be negligent. Endless immortal energy and Buddhist energy swept across the void, replacing the sweating Buddha Futu and forcibly restoring the laws of heaven and earth that were about to disintegrate. A brand new planet and a satellite emerged out of thin air, looking no different from the original planet and satellite. Tens of thousands of small human tribes, each with a population of only 1,000 or so, were thrown into the lush jungles and flat grasslands of this new planet. These human tribes, who were still in the primitive stage, had no idea that they had changed their living environment. Beaming with joy, they began a new cycle of life on this planet. Whether it was the almighty experts of Taoist League or Buddhist League, they all sat cross-legged on lotus thrones of different colors. A total of 72 lotus thrones hovered in the void, with 72 almighty experts of Taoist League and Buddhist League whispering to each other. The name, Tan Lang, Marquis of East Sea Province, appeared vaguely in the void, and then disappeared without a trace. Wu Qi did not know what had happened in the void after he left, nor did he know that he had been listed by the higher-ups of the Celestial Court and the Buddhist League, and that the Celestial Court and the Buddhist League had issued a bounty against him at the same time. He had Kunwu swords and mastered the fiend-slaying sword formation, and he deserved to die. On top of that, he had killed 7 primordial experts, and this was what he had done when he had just stepped into the realm of primordial. How could they not punish him? If they did not kill such a man as soon as possible, would they allow him to continue to cause greater losses to the Celestial Court and the Buddhist League? Even the 9 fiend emperors and 72 fiend kings of the fiend realm had issued a bounty against Wu Qi. If the immortals of the Fiend League could kill Wu Qi or his relatives and friends, they would be rewarded with a territory of different sizes in the fiend realm, depending on how important these people were. Wu Qi did not know about these things, so he flew back to Pangu continent in a good mood. Along the way, he devoured and fused the Rhino Cloak, fusing its existence into his divine soul. He now had the terrible ability to speed up 100 times in a short time, which was definitely a freakish ability. With his current strength, if he could speed up 100 times in a short time, he was confident that he could even threaten an 8th-tier primordial expert. Now that he had stepped into the realm of 9th-tier primordial, obtained the complete legacy of Scroll of Stealing, and possessed the first wisp of innate thievery energy, Wu Qi no longer needed to worry about his future cultivation base. According to the shadowy figure's experience, if Wu Qi kept going step by step, he would be able to step into the realm of Tao breaking in just a few decades, and the realm of Tao fusing in just a few hundred years. He no longer needed to worry about his own cultivation base. He needed to improve the cultivation base of the people around him. Lu Qingfeng was Wu Qi's best brother, the most reliable and capable man around him. His cultivation base was so low that Wu Qi was too embarrassed to mention it. Another example was Yen Bugue. Although he had changed his cultivation base to the true body of heaven and earth scripture, his cultivation base had not even reached the level of first Pangu heaven. Lord Xianxing, Catfish Ao Buzan, Gold Horn, Silver Horn, Gold Feather, Silver Feather, even Patriarch Jiang Yun and the other old immortals, the many disciples of Underhand Sect, Supremacy 3 Flame, his friend in adversity, and Huang Liang, a loyal subordinate whom he had recruited along the way. What kind of overall strength did they have? Although there were many of them, their overall strength was so weak that it made Wu Qi's heart ache. More importantly, although Princess Zhang had awakened her primordial bloodline and even formed the golden body of the god of Scourge, her cultivation base was only about the same as a lower-tier gold immortal. By relying on the bizarre and unpredictable primordial divine power, she could deal with some weak enemies. But as his lover, if he could not elevate her to the realm of primordial, Wu Qi would not feel at ease leaving her alone in the East Sea province. What kind of people had Wu Qi offended now? He had thoroughly offended the Lord Buddha, Amitabha, brutally beaten true Lord Gu Yi, robbed Liu Bang until he was left with nothing but his underpants, and thoroughly offended the Red Emperor, one of the 5 celestial emperors of the 5 directions. Now that he had killed King Tang Qiu in public, needless to say, King Baishan was now thinking about him. If he could not instigate Emperor Haozuan to kill King Baishan, he would have to be careful of King Baishan's revenge. Counting with his fingers, the whole world was filled with his enemies. I'm such a failure as a human being. Why do I suddenly have so many enemies? With a wry smile on his face, he patted the empty dark Een celestial tower, turned it back into a clump of chaotic energy, and swallowed it back into his stomach. After thinking for a long time, he sighed helplessly and said, "Yu Xiong Plain, oh Yu Xiong Plain, I'll have to rely on you. Whether I, Wu Qi, can turn over a new leaf and become a phoenix, all depends on you." Wu Qi shuddered at the thought of the endless natural energy beneath Yu Xiong Plain and the enormous spirit cave, which was said to be Saint Pangu's heart. He did not need a lot, but just 1/1000th of the natural energy in that spirit cave could produce at least 3 to 5 primordial experts and a large group of gold immortals. Wu Qi was not greedy. Really, he would be satisfied if he could produce 3 to 5 primordial experts. 3 plus 5. Excluding himself, there were at most 8 people. He was really not greedy. Chapter 809. Wu Qi was struck dumb. How could he be the 79th person to do such a stupid thing? "If I may ask, what about the 78 seniors?" he asked dryly. Wu Qi's scalp went numb at the mention of the grand sacrifice to heaven and earth and the human emperor's banquet. But now that he had plenty of experience, he knew he would not suffer too much during the banquet. With Emperor Haozuan's decree, Wu Qi could bring no more than 10,000 relatives and maids to live in Liangzhu with him, as the king of East Sea's upper-grade prefecture. The 2 palaces chosen by De Yu's eunuchs for Wu Qi had a good location and scenery. In total, the palaces had more than 30 halls and hundreds of ancillary buildings. They were not far from each other, located on both sides of a great river, and connected by a stone bridge. Dozens of manors were dotted around the palaces. No matter how hard he racked his brains, he could not imagine how powerful this formation was, nor could he imagine how much resources it would take to construct it. Apart from Yu Xiong Plain, where the natural energy was limitless, he could not think of any other place that could support the energy consumption of such a formation. Perhaps even a first-tier primordial immortal would be killed by the power unleashed by such a formation, wouldn't it? The king of East Sea's prefecture? Wu Qi was struck dumb. He was conferred the title of king just like that? And a hereditary king of De Yu's prefecture, one of the 4 grades of mountain, water, prefecture, and city? Although it was the lowest rank 9 state king, it was still an upper-class state king among the upper and lower rank 9 nobles. This meant that he had the direct jurisdiction of 2 other large states. After hesitating for a while, Emperor Haozuan shook his head and said, "The king of East Sea's prefecture king need not intervene in the matter of King Baishan. I'll talk to him." With these 2 palaces of Emperor Haozuan, Wu Qi was qualified to bring a certain number of relatives and subordinates to live in Liangzhu. The palaces and manors outside Liangzhu could not be bought with money. Apart from the natives who had lived here for generations, they could only be bought with rewards from Emperor Haozuan. Owning their own palaces and manors outside of Liangzhu city meant that they had the right to stay in Liangzhu city, which meant that they had become the true ministers of Diyu. Beads of cold sweat were breaking out from Wu Qi's body. He wanted to scream, but no sound came out from his mouth. After taking out the medallion that allowed him to see Emperor Haozuan at any time, Wu Qi showed it to the old oracle. The old oracle waved his hand, and a few black-clad eunuchs came to greet Wu Qi and led him slowly into the palace. Emperor Haozuan burst out laughing, nodded, and said, "No matter what, you have done a great service." Pass down the decree. You are now the Marquis of East Sea Province, the 9th grade upper grade king of East Sea Province. In addition to the fiefdom of the East Sea Province, 2 provinces near the East Sea Province will be chosen as the territories under the direct jurisdiction of the king of East Sea Province. Emperor Haozuan was obviously very satisfied with what Wu Qi had done in the past few days. Proud of himself, he clapped his hands and said with a smile, "I'm very happy that the king of East Sea Province has done such a great service. Servants, prepare a feast." That's all. Emperor Haozuan jumped to his feet in surprise and cried out, "You killed the 7 primordial immortals?" There was still a month and a half before the next grand sacrificial ceremony, and Wu Qi had to be there on time to complete the legal formalities to confer him the title of King of East Sea Province. Take Bo Zhongfu, the current prefecture overseer of Zhong Province, for example. Although he was the prefecture overseer of Zhong Province, he also had his own mansion in Liangzhu, and he was considered a minister. Laughing strangely, the old oracle raised his finger and said, "Marquis is one of the 79 Diyu oracles who broke through the realm of oracles and came to the imperial palace. Well, he is also the only one who is not injured. Cultivating both fleshly body and magic is indeed extraordinary." As soon as he emerged from the void, dozens of terrible divine senses immediately locked onto Wu Qi. 12 dark supreme towers appeared silently around Wu Qi, completely sealing off space and time, and the natural energy disappeared without a trace in that instant. The space around Wu Qi had become an absolute vacuum, and even space and time no longer existed. This was just the power on the surface. Wu Qi had not seen any white-robed oracles from the secret palace. The secret palace was the place where the most powerful forces of Diyu were gathered, and the craziest, and strongest monsters of Diyu were all hiding in it. Glancing around, Wu Qi could not tell that Liangzhu had such an abnormal defense. He only knew that the imperial palace was extremely well defended, but he did not expect that the imperial palace was so heavily guarded. As a primordial immortal who had just become a primordial immortal, he was almost seriously injured by the aura of these oracles on duty. This was too outrageous. The old oracle shook his head and laughed. "It's nothing. The shortest one has been lying in bed for half a year, and the longest one has only rested for 3 years. Well, when Marquis has his own clan in the future, I'll have to remind my children that even if they have a divine cultivation base, they should not come to the imperial palace like this. Not only will they frighten the oracles on duty, they will also frighten themselves. That's not good." After hurriedly arranging the complicated affairs of the territory, Wu Qi immediately announced that he would go into seclusion to stabilize his cultivation base. Then, together with Princess Zhonglu, they went into the underground palace under the palace, which was specially built for cultivation. A deep bell rang out in the imperial palace. Tens of thousands of black-robed oracles of Diyu rose into the sky from all over Liangzhu. Their terrible auras merged into one, slowly rising from the ground like a great mountain. A terrible pressure that could destroy everything came pressing down on Wu Qi silently, making his bones creak. He almost could not withstand the pressure and was about to be completely crushed. A formation with a circumference of nearly 100 million miles? Was this still the old, closed, rigid, and lifeless Liangzhu? The speed of the city's reaction surprised Wu Qi. Even if a dozen primordial experts were to invade it at the same time, they would be killed in an instant, wouldn't they? At the very least, he could see large runes and patterns of formations beginning to flash on the ground with the imperial palace as the center. It was a terrible formation, nearly 100 million miles in circumference, laid out with the whole of Liangzhu as its center. He never dreamed that Liangzhu's defense was so terrible. He just wanted to save time, so he came out from not far from the imperial palace. But he never thought that his appearance would cause such a huge reaction. This is the Kunwu divine weapon given by the sacred emperor, Wu Qi explained hurriedly. It has nothing to do with me. In the great hall, Wu Qi saw Emperor Haozuan again. He was sitting on the throne as usual, dressed in the same clothes. Does this Emperor Haozuan sit there all year round without eating, drinking, bathing, and never go out to pay his respects? Wu Qi wondered maliciously. Leaving behind 2 blood-draining celestial fiends to confuse the enemies, Wu Qi and Princess Zhang Lu plunged into the depths of Yuxiong Plain, 100 million miles beneath it. As a result, the enormous pressure dissipated in an instant, and all the oracles returned to their posts. The huge runes and diagrams on the ground were extinguished one by one, and the deep, powerful ringing of bells faded away. The old oracle grinned, nodded at Wu Qi, and said, "Congratulations on your success in your cultivation base, Marquis of East Sea Province. Well, you've really reached the realm of supreme oracles, and your fleshly body has reached the realm of Hongmengpanga heaven. No wonder you didn't die just now. Cultivating both fleshly body and magic is really good." Wu Qi hurriedly bowed his head and bowed respectfully to Emperor Haozuan. After bidding farewell to the emperor, Wu Qi followed the few eunuchs out of the hall. Wu Qi swallowed a mouthful of saliva and laughed dryly. The manor was 100,000 miles away from Liangzhu, a distance that could be covered by a single step for someone like Wu Qi, and according to Yu's classification, it was still in the outskirts of Liangzhu, an excellent location. The dozens of manors covered a total of millions of acres of fertile farmland and produced a bountiful annual yield. Together with the manors, hundreds of villages and towns where the land was planted were given to Wu Qi, and all the people in them became Wu Qi's subjects. Just as Wu Qi was about to be crushed by the tremendous pressure, a black-robed oracle suddenly appeared on the supreme tower facing Wu Qi. The white-haired old oracle gave Wu Qi a blank look, carefully distinguishing his appearance and aura, then slowly raised his right hand and waved gently. Emperor Haozuan burst into laughter. He made no secret of his admiration for Wu Qi. With a smile, he asked Wu Qi to tell him everything in detail, and he kept asking Wu Qi about the details. When Wu Qi told him that he was chased by true Lord Gu Yi on his way back, and that he had severely wounded the man with a single blow, the emperor cheered and rewarded Wu Qi with 2 palaces and dozens of manors outside Liangzhu. The eunuchs of the Yu dynasty were very efficient. Just as Emperor Haozuan was conferring Wu Qi as the king of East Sea Prefecture, the imperial edict and medallions for Wu Qi's promotion had been prepared, including the title deeds of 2 palaces and dozens of manors, all of which had been handed over to Wu Qi. Moreover, these eunuchs told Wu Qi that his promotion was a special edict, and that he would have to attend the next heaven and earth sacrificial ceremony held by the Yu dynasty, for he would have to pray to heaven and earth, announce his promotion to all the ghosts and deities, and receive the human emperor's banquet. After a brief pause, Wu Qi hurriedly bowed and thanked Emperor Haozuan. The power of the stars, natural energy, and Pangu's sacred energy poured down like a waterfall from the 9 heavens, fusing into Emperor Haozuan's body. Emperor Haozuan squinted at Wu Qi with a faint smile on the corner of his mouth. "Congratulations, Marquis of East Sea Prefecture. Well, how did you break through the path of ingress in such a short time?" When he said that, Emperor Haozuan's face turned ferocious, and the armrest of his throne was crushed to pieces. As soon as he said the word banquet, Wu Qi's face turned pale, and the emperor's face turned extremely unsightly. He quickly corrected himself and said, "I think the king of East Sea Prefecture is tired, so you'd better go back and rest quickly." Well, if that king of Han dares to come back, the king of East Sea Prefecture will have to keep a close eye on him. As for King Baishan, Wu Qi bowed to Emperor Haozuan and told him what he had done in the past few days. Of course, he mainly mentioned that he had killed 7 primordial immortals and destroyed a small world in the mortal world, but avoided mentioning that he had robbed Buddha Futu, Liu Bang, and the others. After all, it was not a glorious thing to do, was it not? About a mile above the gate of Diyu Imperial Palace, a piece of blue sky about 10 feet in circumference suddenly collapsed, and Wu Qi strode out of it. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.